3, 2. Oh my God.
Yo, what's up?
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the program.
The Airtime Podcast is presented by Van Shoes since 1966.
There's nothing fake about it. Have something to believe in and be yourself. You know what I'm saying?
Welcome back to the show, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. We have a special guest, a father, a husband, one hell of a good friend, a snowboarder, professional photographer, award-winning photographer at that, a cover extraordinaire, artist, golfer, lover of all. We have the one and only, a hell of a good human, Chad Chomlack, on the show. How you doing?
Yeah, man, I'm good. Thanks, Jody. That was generous. Trying to be a golfer.
Yeah.
Trying to be a dad.
Trying.
Tried.
And both of them, there's a lot of pressure.
There's a lot of pressure. There is.
There's a little bit less on the line for golf.
Yes.
Maybe. Depends how serious
Depends
you're
on
taking it.
If I'm playing like Dev or someone like that, then that's a lot of pressure.
Are the rumors true? Is Devin Walsh a good golfer?
He's a really good golfer. He's a sneaky golfer. That's what I call him. There's like certain golfers that are like really consistent, and when I'm playing matches with them or something like that, it's like I can expect stuff, but he's tricky. He's like can put something out of play, but then all of a sudden he's like putting for birdie or par out of the woods. You're like, and literally like it happens every single round. Or what he does, and I've noticed this little trick, he'll start to ask you questions about your swing. So if I like grab a couple skins from him or I beat a couple holes, he'll like start, man, I noticed your swing's like really smooth. Like you're pulling away, Chad. It's really good. You know, his voice. He's like, what are you doing there? And then it makes you think about your swing. And then eventually
And then he wins.
Up. Yeah. He wins. Every time. He takes
he's on to you,
somebody.
Dev.
Yeah. Best guy to play with, though.
Who's the best snowboarder that you've golfed with?
Ooh.
Because there's a couple good ones in town.
There is. I would say like skill-wise or less like skill-wise?
Skill-wise. We're going points here. It's not art.
Arrow, for sure.
You've played golf with Arrow.
He's mental. Like I started playing with him when he first started playing, and to watch him become what he's now is just like insane. Like he's so good.
What's his role? He works...
He's like, I think he's a teaching pro at like a really significant club down in Southern California. Yeah. He's good at everything. That's kind of those dudes that just irritate you, but he's tight with it. So I'd say him, but you know what? Dev's a good golfer. Like he's good. Risto's pretty good too.
Sollers and Craig and Mikey are all pretty good golfers.
They are. Yeah.
Kyle Cadam from Electric's a good golfer.
He is. I haven't played with him, but I heard he's good.
He's
Russell
good.
Winfield's good.
Deadlung's a good golfer. There's like a lot of like people that are like, breaking 80, I would say, or just over 80, which to me is like having grown up around a lot of my friends who were great golfers.
Yeah.
As soon as you start hitting around 80 consistently, you're
wow.
That's
a whole a great world.
At Mark Zoller's golf tournament, someone broke 70.
No shit.
Yeah. At
like here?
No, at Nick North beforehand.
Yeah,
I shot like a 69 or something. I was like, Jesus Christ.
Well, Mikey, watching Mikey, like he's played golf most of his life, his family's in all that kind of stuff. Watching him like the last 3 years, because he was a member at Big Sky where before my wife and I jumped ship out to the Kootenays, I was a member there, and I played with him a ton. And to watch him get good that fast, like real good, like he's breaking 80 and he's doing, I was like, he's a threat for sure. I didn't still hold my own with him, no problem, but.
Nice. I like the little cocky swag. You gotta have some swag, you know what I mean? Okay, so let's get to the main event. What happened last night? You're in Vancouver.
Yeah.
You have an art show.
Yeah.
I saw some highlights on Instagram. It looked like an incredible turnout. It was called It All Belongs, presented by Chad Chomlack.
Yeah,
what
man.
was the show about?
Yeah.
Who was there? Was it a good time? Let's hear a little bit about this event.
Yeah, so, like as a photographer throughout my career, obviously focused within the snowboard community and all that, you get to go to rad places and see incredible things. And I've been incredibly privileged to be able to be in some incredible situations and areas of the world in the mountains. So obviously you take more, imagery outside of like just snowboarding and watching someone huck something off. And I just over the last couple years, I found myself just kind of seeing that there was a body of work that I had that was like very different than snowboarding, that there was coming from sort of maybe a deeper current within me that was like, I hadn't really expressed yet. I hadn't really shown. I've never sold prints. I don't have a print store. Just something about it. I just kind of was like, I'll know kind of like the right time when that needs to happen, no idea how that works in the fine art and the gallery kind of world. And I just kind of, for me, I was just kind of putting it out there and not even really putting it out there, to be honest. It was one of those things. If this happens, it happens. I'd love to be able to start leaning into that part of it, because it's like the it all belongs is kind of like a statement and a mantra that we've had for a while. And it's kind of this, I don't know if you want to call it like a philosophy almost, or something that kind of has been an anchor in my family's life, and especially with my wife walking through what she walked through with cancers, 8 years ago now. And it, disrupted our lives in a way that was really significant, and then set this kind of tone of how we're viewing our life, how we're viewing our world around us, how we're interacting even with like the natural bits of life. And sort of, like for sure there's like a spiritual thread there. And I found that my art, the way I was shooting was I was getting more and more attracted to these sort of elements of nature, or like textures, or things that kind of spoke to me. And I was saying last night at this show, I was like, the biggest thing out of this sort of journey in my life as a photographer and this art form has really been this relationship that I've deepened with nature. And it's kind of like this guy, Zach Bush. He's like Dr. Zach Bush. He's like a really smart dude, and talks about our inner connectivity to the natural world and how it's so inseparable. Like we live as in opposition to nature so much of the time. Like it's something there, and then we're here, where there's absolutely no separation. And the influence we actually have, even energetically, with the natural world is significantly measured now. Like we know that how we speak to plants, have an effect on how they grow and how they interact. And so there's this beautiful new science, that's going past like even philosophies and like theories, to just proving that the relationship that we have and how we participate with the natural world is a direct reflection of how the actual natural world behaves, and as well as we do. So think about the fucking chaos that we're in, right? Like think about all this that's going on, and we just get further and further away from our like kind of essence of being within nature and relating to nature. And so really it all belongs, I guess you could say, and how I photograph and all these kind of fine art pieces were around this like relationship and this curiosity I had about like how actually maybe nature, even like we often look at it and kind of judge it and form an opinion of it. But then for me anyways, I started to see a real like, this is actually saying something to me. Like it actually mirrors back something about myself. So that for me, I'll never forget it. Actually, was on a walk around 1 Mile Lake up in Pemberton. And we had just recently moved up there. My wife was going through right in the early days of when she was diagnosed with cancer, and she was going into treatment. And, when we have such a supportive community, and, everyone rallied around our family. It was crazy. Like, it was just like an incredible, like being on the other end of that was like one of the most, significant, points in my life. But as much support you get, as many conversations you can have with those that are close to you and the friends that support you, you're still left with yourself, and you're still left with like, holy shit, I'm a dad of 2 kids. At the time they were like 11 and 13 or whatever. I'm like, what does this all mean? And you know, where do I go with this? And where do I find support? Because yeah, sure, I can hear the words and we got you, we're with you and all that stuff, but I still have to walk this journey out. And my wife's walking out a gnarly journey, and I'm trying to support it in it. And there was this process that was going on for me where I was really finding myself trying or looking, or just like, maybe it's always been there, like it hadn't maybe been activated in this kind of way, but there was this draw to be in nature in a way that I had never been. And just like actually felt like when I would go for these walks around 1 mile or down by the river behind our house, it slowly became an area where I would be whatever, yelling in anger in the forest, or like, you know, scared out of my mind because we got a really wild scan back or whatever it was. And I found myself giving out this like energy and this like grief and this like fear and the things that were coming up in me. And I remember on this one walk, I was looking over this, and it's one of the pictures that I showed last night, but I was like looking over this ice form on the ground, like it was on the lake, and it was kind of like halfway almost into winter, fall, and you kind of get those cool like textures, you know,
The bubble is
the
in the
bubble.
ice. Yeah, the bubbles.
The bubbles.
I love the bubbles.
I love them bubbles. And those, and so I'm standing there, and I don't, even know really what I was thinking about. I just know I was in a place where I was like, fuck, I just need to be supported, like I feel like, God, how do I find that inner resource that's there? And it was like, I look down and see this like kind of form that was within it. And it was, I shouldn't really how to explain it other than it was like, I felt like it was mirroring back to me, like as deep and as solid as the ice was, so you can be, right? Then I would look up again, and I saw the beaver dams that are shaped at this, and the busy beavers making their house, and the structures that are all there. And in that, I saw this reflection back to me, of like, you got this, like you can work through this, you can do this, And I think that when our relationship to the natural world switches from us like looking and getting from it and interpreting it and like putting our projections on it or whatever our needs and our wants, to all of a sudden it's actually looking back at you. Like all of a sudden nature is looking back at you. Like it's going, how many days have we come out of the Whistler backcountry to like the sickest skies in the world, like sick, like people don't even understand those early mornings of like crossing the glaciers and just the awe that it brings up in you. Like it's almost, it's like you're lost for words. You can't put it into description, but something inside of you is like, I belong to this. Like I somehow I belong to this, and it reflects back, I don't know, like hope and sustenance, and that our little lives that we worry about constantly and we're afraid of, and it's unpredictable and we don't know our futures and blah, 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 and all those kind of things. You start to see the mirroring of nature back to you and what it says about you and about being human. All of a sudden the script flips, man. And you start going, okay, well, the cycles, like we're up in Nelson and we just watched the cycles of like a robin, because we got lots of time on our hands and we're sitting on our porch like old people. We're sitting there with like these robins with shit everywhere, which make a lot of mess that we had to clean up afterwards. So I was like, do we take these nests down or would you keep them up? But we watched like the full cycle of like life, like them making the nest, coming in, dropping their eggs, them being hatched, being fed, flying the nest there is empty. And it's a microcosm, right, of something that's like, yeah, like life is sustaining itself. I know it's like we're getting inundated by fear through all our media, through everything. It's very intentional. It's to direct us away from our true essence. Our true essence is inseparable from the world that's around us. So if the world is suffering, like the natural world, which it is, it's stressed, we're gonna too, And so that relationship to me is like the hugest inspiration. That's the material that I want to shoot and communicate. And so last night I had an opportunity to, through some really great people that set up a really cool relationship with the Ballet BC, and myself showing first time like these kind of fine art prints in a way that I had an opportunity to really convey that and really have people experience, because the kind of dance mirrored the like images and all this kind of stuff, that people drop. It wasn't just an art show, but it was a real it was a really connecting experience. Like people walked away going like, I feel lighter. I feel more connected, like good, you know what I mean? Like hopeful and stuff. And so, yeah, it was insane. It was absolutely insane.
Way to take that full circle. That was so well thought out, curated, and I love that you came back to all that tying into your event, and you touched on a lot of things there. So I will try not to overlook too much, and maybe the first. So give me a second here. I got about 3 touch points that I've had the privilege to shoot with you, and I feel like a lot of younger photographers and filmmakers, creatives, at the beginning go out to extract the main event. You're hitting a jump, the big air in the middle. When I went to Japan with you, maybe one of the first, and you were how much older? You're probably 10 years older than me, let's say.
Yeah.
So a little bit of and you took a bit of a father figure role, at least to me, on that trip. And I really feel like I looked up to you, and I liked photos, and I feel like everything that you had a lot of guidance on that trip that I was looking for, and it was an easy conversation.
Yeah,
and,
it was.
And you're not really somebody who has a lot of surface level conversations. You're like, no, let's talk about life here. Like, how you doing? You know what I mean? And on that trip, you took so many photos, and I was lucky to be the one at the right place at the right time, where you'd be like, Jody, ride through the trees and do X. Yeah. And you had this vision that I hadn't really seen from other photographers. I'm not saying other photographers don't have great visions. It's just yours was very unique. And the way I would articulate your vision is it's very about the process and not about the main event. Yeah. It's about the morning in Japan, sitting on the ground and having a breakfast that none of us have ever had, and we're cross-legged at this weird small table. Totally. And those images tied into the morning in the van and continued. Yeah. And I think that's what makes a great photographer, is being able to capture the process of what people like you and me get to live. Because the day-to-day mundane part of our winter seasons is so beautiful. And photography, almost more than video, if you get that exact moment from the right angle, there's just such a feeling that goes along with that image. And especially if you were on the trip and you are the photographer and you capture the image in a way, anyone who's on that trip that looks at that image goes, it brings you back to that feeling. And you can see it through one single image. Like there's this one photo, there's a photo of Rusty that comes to mind. There's a photo of me ripping through these trees, and it brings me back.
Arm.
Yeah, totally a one arm. Yeah, there you go. And it brings me back to that feeling. Another touch point on your kind of beautiful, long-winded answer to that fucking art show. No, I'm glad you did that, but I'm kind of long-winding my response because there was some key touch points in there. The nature thing, like I've started to realize, this is going to sound cheesy, but fuck it. Nature is your organic multivitamin. You know what I mean? You don't have to do anything but go into it. And it provides you with way more than what you would get by, obviously, if you're deficient in certain minerals and vitamins, you know what I mean? Like eat an apple or whatever, have some blueberries. I'm just saying that maybe the top up that you're looking for is going into nature. And I love that you had such a profound experience. You're looking at the ice, you're looking at the beaver dam, and you don't see what you're not looking for. If you're not looking for meaning in nature, you're not going to find it. Totally. You're just going to play on your phone and zip through and walk back into your car and go back home, and you will find nothing. Totally. But if you allow nature to do its thing, and if you're out there and you ask questions and you put your phone away, tells you a lot. Yeah, I'm 1,000 times into that. And it's true. Like, I think that
some of the qualities that need to go, that I know for me anyways, really since I was a young boy, is just bringing, I've always been curious about my relationship in nature, and not to be quick to ascribe my own meaning to it, but allow it the time and space to actually reveal what it really is, like what it is, you know what I mean? And that takes time. And we live in a time, I'm right in this. It's not like I'm set aside from this, but our focus is so stolen all the time. And we have these screens and the things that are going on, and there's the essential part of life. But I do find it funny that when we're in nature and the things that we do, a lot of times we're skipping over some really fucking sick stuff, and things that actually could provide, like you said, the medicine that maybe we need or that we're looking for. And that the river will start talking to you if you spend more time with it. It will. Like, it's weird, but you'll start to pick up some, and that's not words. It's more just like, okay, like however it is, your life flows in a certain way, in a certain direction, and you need to trust and let go and let it take you where it wants to. I'm just using that as an example, but it's like any type of lineage that you look in, and any wisdom traditions throughout history, they're always inviting us back to remember that shit. Like to remember where we've come from and where we'll go. And the in-between is going to be different for everybody's lifetime, but that place of belonging, and it'll never ever change, to be honest. I mean, we can separate ourselves deeply, but it's the truest thing that we have to reveal revealed truth of what it means to be human, in my opinion.
I feel like it's the community that, lots of people talk about community and the importance of it. I mean, you even touched on it with Anastasia beating cancer and doing that in Whistler, and the community coming together, and you being like, people are saying things, but I need more than that. And I feel like nature is like the community that's always there.
Yeah, you got it.
If you have nobody, if you go into nature, there's a massive uplifting community that is always there for you.
Always.
And they're never judging you.
Yeah.
They're like,
never.
You screwed up yesterday? All good. We're here for you every fucking day. We show up for you every day.
You wonder why everybody we're so crazy about our dogs and our pets. It's like, well, they're a part of this thing that's not going to judge you or cast you out or whatever it is. And it's huge.
I got a question here sent in from none other than your son.
Oh.
So he voice texted it to me, so we'll throw it on the mic.
Uh-oh.
Hello, Airtime Podcast, Chad Chomlack. It is your son, Jaden, here. And I'm saying in a quick question, I love you so much. I'm excited to listen to the episode. So you have decided to start selling your art for the first time, and I kind of just wanted to ask what made you make that decision and why it took so long. Love you lots. Bye.
What a dude.
Yeah. Big fan of both your boys and your wife, but let's
yeah, I am too. I think it was, we've done these I guess there's been points where my photos have been sold, like within like the Vans art shows and some of the start season fundraisers, and we've donated stuff to Save the Brain and all those kind of things to be auctioned, but I've never really like sold them. And to be honest, I didn't feel that confident. Is to be honest, I didn't feel that confident about. I think it's an incredible privilege when someone purchased something to put into their house that they're going to look at for a long time. And I love the snowboarding things I've been able to create and all that kind of stuff. But there's something about that I just didn't feel confident until I would say the last year or two at the body of work that I had to put out there. And there's no hiding when you like last night I had 12 photos, 40 by 60, just any blemish is gonna show anything. So I think there's those things that you just kind of like, I would say that up until now I just didn't feel confident in the body of work that I had to really like like charge the equivalent to something of purchasing something like a fine art for someone to put it into their home was a really great feeling to have that confidence like yesterday and see that response and see what happened because I'm very proud of what was there and very proud of like the work that I've been able to curate and be patient with has been the big thing. And not just like, sure, things get sprinkled through the gram and like things out there and stuff like that, but I've really held back in a way that it for sure, comes from probably my own convictions, my own internal dialogue, probably a little bit through that process. But it also comes from people that I really respect in the industry and the other artists that I really respect and other photographers that I really respect. And one of the things that I've always seen of the ones that I really like a Cole Barash or someone like that, is that there's a mystery to them that they hold things that I think allow the preciousness and the worth to almost like germinate and like marinate,
Like good jar of pickles.
It's like a good jar of pickles or sauerkraut. Yeah.
I like what you were saying about like the body of work though. Like in order to have a body of work, you need to have, thousands of hours behind a camera.
Yeah.
And at the beginning, yeah, for sure. If it's your third year shooting photos, you probably, most photographers or filmers would have like a bit of imposter syndrome. Like they're new to the game and they're shooting beside people like Andy Wright and Ollie G and Scott Surface or whatever, the list goes on.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I'm insignificant. But then you keep shooting. And then one day you actually look at your body of work, the collection of images you've taken over the course of a long time now.
Yeah, man.
And you can actually see it clearly and be like, no, that photo that I took that I thought was cool back then is actually like a masterpiece. Like that's a beautiful image.
Totally.
And then you're like, that photo that I thought was really sick of the person doing that turn just because there was a sunset in the back actually isn't good. and the photo that I took of the beaver dam is incredible.
Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. And that would be the answer to my son's questions for sure, or question. Because I didn't feel, I didn't have that, I still have that imposter thing, it's definitely a lot less than the beginning in the years, but there is that, and some of it's harnessed for sure to help almost motivate and push me to some excellence. So it's almost like it's a bit of a double-edged sword. So if you build a good relationship with that imposter, that piece of it, there's compassion and empathy with the exchange, not like the tyrant inside that's just like, yeah, you suck, whatever. Don't do it wrong, or whatever it might be, or however that shows up in your own life. But we all got that kind of going on, it's just part of our process. And I think when we build a healthier relationship, maybe got a little more years under our belt or whatever, and maybe you take a little bit more seriousness off yourself, and just like start showing up like in ways that you're not putting anything on, then a lot of those, the voice gets a little bit more tender almost,
Yeah, and there's something to be said about kind of like earning your place and having the respect by your peers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's a lot of people when you first enter any line of work that aren't just going to overnight be like, oh yeah, like welcome to the club, your shit is amazing, because it's probably not.
Yeah.
But after a long, maybe you fluked a couple images, maybe you fluked a couple crazy 1080s and landed on a big jump.
Yeah.
But your body of work and like you're kind of earning your place.
Yeah.
And then eventually people are like, no, you've grinded it out. Especially if you're shooting action sports.
Absolutely.
Like I think that there's a badge that you get when you've been doing it for over 10 years, because the action sports photographer beside you had to deal with that same bullshit. And eventually it's like, this person has earned their keep and they're a part of the club and they get the stamp.
Yeah.
And even if they're not necessarily the best, or I mean, a body of work that's an art piece is hard to judge anyway, because but at least there's a badge of honor that gets passed and everyone in the community goes like, no, this guy's in the club.
Yeah.
He's paid his dues. And that to me is like a badge of honor that is like you deserve that, and it feels good to earn that that place in your community where everyone's like, no, he's in the club, and it feels good to get in the club then if your peers get you in. But it doesn't feel good if everyone's just allowed in the door for, you know, a couple things that they've put a couple hours into. Like, I want the people that I look up to be the Coles and the Ollies and the U's of the world that have like shot bodies of work that have influenced so many people. And there's a reason why they're in the greats category.
Wow. Yeah. You're so right. That's bang on. And it is like everyone, like I, you know, in the early days, really like when I started to sort of push in, you know, to making more of like a full time, or like from passion. And like, I never, ever wanted to shoot snowboarding ever. Like, I just was like, that would be the last thing. 'Cause I grew up snowboarding, and it was like, and I was in an era that was so beautiful to be a part of and all that. And when I looked at the photographers that were running around chasing people and stuff, I was like, fuck, that's the worst job ever, dude. How would I ever want to do that?
He's not even shredding.
He shredded one lap. Like, this is so lame. Anyways, and it was, you know, when I moved here and we had our boys, and I definitely don't like shooting with my boys, like just bringing my camera. I just never, it's just something that I remember one time I bought this, like, because I just kind of felt like I had to. I was like bought this like gimbal, like a gimbal, is it a gimbal? Yeah, gimbal. Yeah. And the GoPro gimbal or whatever it was. And I was like, did one lap with like Caleb or something like that. And I was like, okay, I'm going to, you know, it's good. You know, if these guys are doing it and they got some board sponsors, so I'm trying to be that dad. And I'm like, I mean, it was horrible. The footage was horrible. The experience, I was falling everywhere. Caleb's getting mad. Like, it was just like dumb. And they have like kind of running joke, like gimbal dad. Like, and then we just like, that was it. I never did it again. You know, like, it was just such a, because I like shredding. And it wasn't until I was in a place where I saw that jump where I could spend time with the people that I really love being with, like the Devs and JF and Roman and DCP, all those guys in the early AS start and all that stuff. I was like, well, this is just such a sweet like way to be out in the backcountry, get better at sledding. And so I'd occasionally kind of pop out there and I'd bring my camera and I just started shooting, you know, just little bits and pieces. And then my first published photo was Arrow, and it was Arrow and Craven in the same year, I think, with SBC and something else, or like an ad or some spy ad or something with Arrow. And I was like, this is sick. Like, he's stoked, you know, like we just did something together. And then I was like, okay, like let's kind of maybe see where this goes. And then it was a couple years kind of picking away, and I would do it sort of part-time. And then yeah, like I think one of the actually first bigger trips was with you going over to Japan, at that scale, to like, that's the reason why I was going, was to document and do that. And something came alive in me, like in those spaces. And I think it's being together with dudes and moving through and creating through and surviving and all the mess that goes along with it. There's something so like primal about that shit, you know, like it's just such it taps into that. Yeah. Those pieces that are just kind of were made for that type of connection and like survival and being out there and stuff. And as well as it just, I got to ride a lot, you know, and got to get laps in. And man, that trip was like psycho, the snow that we had. Like the days at Cortina are burnt into my brain, you know, and what a gift that was. And it was really since then that it started to kind of grow for me, and kept kind of going. But I still never liked shooting my kids. I did shoot Jaden for Volcom this year for the first time at Whitewater for their new movie, which was sick.
I was speaking with Kevin Sansalone, and he actually said that this one time you were speaking about shooting Jaden and Caleb, and there was something that really stuck out. He said something along the lines of that Chad wanted to be their dad and not their personal photographer or coach. And that's something I always kind of picked up, because I think a lot of parents, when their kids get into something, they get excited and they want it to happen, and they do become the gimbal dad.
Sure.
And
yeah.
and that's fine if they can
Totally.
if they can dance and have that relationship. Cool.
Totally.
But I also really respect the space that you gave Caleb and Jaden to grow into their unique the two individuals that they have blossomed into. Not my favorite choice of word, blossom, but I used it and we're gonna roll with it.
I like it.
But like those two are they're so different, they're so unique, and it wasn't like this like you yelling at one of them to like maintain as a contest snowboarder and do that. Like they did it organically because of the community that they're surrounded by.
Absolutely.
And they have, you know, if they're going for dinner with Devin Walsh and JF and they're surrounded by that and they respect that community and the heritage and the roots of not only Whistler, but like the culture of snowboarding.
Totally.
And then they're also immersed in what's going on in these mountains just here in Whistler. It's like the best riding ever. And you ride beside E-Man and Bryn and all these individuals. And it's like those two have two of my favorite snowboarding approaches right now. It's so tasteful. They have such good manners, and you did a hell of a good job.
Oh, dude. Thank you. I mean, they're
Which one snowboarding do you like more?
It depends. Dude, you're right though. Like they both like have this, I just love it. I just think it's so cool. And I think that, you know, for sure it was the influences around them. And I think, I mean, I just, as much as I've tried to, I've tried to make snowboarding and the snowboard culture, certain things at certain times mean certain things, but it always goes back to like, you know, I was, you know, 13 years old, had my first like, you know, Tom Sims like FE swallowtail at Mount Baker and trying to follow Craig Kelly, like all these kind of things. That's what I grew up like. I grew up with this like really pure version of just this piece of wood that we slid on that was epic at such an epicenter of things, you know, and of snowboarding, and watching and growing up in that, and the values that were kept and withheld around style, around respect, around holding your like all the integrity issues of just like things like that, and fast riding, T to B, like aggressive, like all of those things that didn't have coaching, didn't have like, you know, we're riding the bank slalom to go down this as fast as we could. And yet it was just this community. And so from the parties to the, like the lift lines to the whatever, Baker put a DNA in me that I think never left. And so when I had kids and we moved up here after they were, you know, just born, and we raised them here and all that kind of stuff, that was just I got really actually confused of how snowboarding was when it came to like sort of the expression that it was in. And I get it, and there's a business around all that kind of stuff, but it's still at its essence, the core is still there. The thread is still there of this self-expression, freedom, an area to release who you are at some level and interpret the way you want to. So watching the boys, you know, try into the contest scene, and, you know, always, you know, my wife and I were like, didn't really give a shit what, you know, path they took with snowboarding, as long as when they were out there, they showed up. Like if you didn't show up, then you're going home. Like, you know, it's not about winning, losing or anything, but if you weren't showing up and what I mean by that is like, I'm here, I'm with my friends, I get to go to this contest, I get to like express myself and learn new tricks, whatever it might be, Camp of Champs. I got great coaches like Rusty and Jody and all these people and stuff like that. They got it. They were just very like respectful. I would say they weren't these entitled, like didn't walk around with a lot of entitlement of like, oh, I deserve this, I deserve that. They just were like, this is my culture. This is my community. I identify as a snowboarder. You know, like my parents have, I don't know, like it was just kind of part of their fabric of who they are. And so of course, like as they get older and as if they choose to kind of move into the snowboard path and all that kind of stuff, then it's going to be unique to them. And so, yeah, for sure, the last few years especially has been so rad to watch. Like, Like I really like, I enjoy watching them both. Jaden doesn't show anything. It's like he never shows me like stuff, and so I get irritated. Where Caleb and I, like, he'll like, yeah, let's check this out, and his style is like so sick and like has this lanky stuff. So he's got it down, and Jaden I obviously love, but but he's very like kind of that private, keeps his cards. He's kind of that a little bit of an old school snowboarder in a way. Like he's kind of got this like, you don't release anything, you kind of just like preserve stuff and doesn't oversaturate his feed and all those things, and that's intentional. He's got a lot of integrity around his snowboarding, way more than I have had.
Both of them have pushed into different, unique lanes in snowboarding, and I appreciate and I respect them both so much. Both of those lanes I love.
Yeah.
Like I look at like Cannon Cummings, and there's
Totally.
a group of people who the fabric that they're intertwined with is just like the fabric that I fuck with. I'm just like,
totally.
I love their approach, and it's
Totally.
like, yeah, of course they're immersed in these like incredible settings, and they have they're very fortunate in the sense where they have the best mentors ever coming over for
sure.
household dinners.
For sure.
You know what I mean? You're like, Jaden and Caleb grew up with Devin popping by and JF popping by and whoever, and the whole Yes team is kind of around
Yes
in
guys,
Sandsalon.
these are
It's like,
all of them. Yeah.
but they never did have that like chip on their shoulder, privileged kids walk with a cocky attitude. Like they're always very old school, like you were saying. They let their actions
Totally.
speak louder than their words,
Totally.
which is like kind of the vibe, you know? And it's like in a day and age where like I feel like, and I kind of butchered this in the last couple episodes, I feel like, but so many people are holding on to that false narrative that you start believing in with these analytics that comes from social media.
For sure.
Like Jaden's following and what Jaden's doing in snowboarding and Caleb is way more impactful and is such a good representation of our culture, our sport, everything that snowboarding stands for. And as somebody who values what all of my peers and my mentors have created with snowboarding, from the early days of Craig and Jamie and Terrier and Noah and everyone, Brian and everybody who's created this thing, Travis, Jed, Lewif, and it's like to see the fabric of snowboarding getting chipped at from all these angles now that social media plays such a big part in our life, and you see something like Montec and these fast fashion snowboard companies that aren't necessarily giving back to our culture, or at least they don't have that same level of respect that I do for the culture.
Totally.
And they're taking up big market share.
Yeah.
And that just eats me alive because I'm like, I want snowboarding to still have that same vibe and appeal that I once had, because it was a generational thing that was passed down almost like a religion. And it's passed on by stories and hanging out with like your elders, and it was like it's
true.
It's very
tribal.
It's
like,
tribal. It's like this beautiful thing. Like going to the Mount Baker Banks slalom is like you go there and you're immersed in that community. You get a feeling of what it's like to be like it's raw, and there's the guy that's like super goofy and stuff, and there's guys hard headed like don't touch my fucking board. I need to win this race, and it's like our community's there, and it's amazing. And we're a bunch of characters.
Totally, yeah. You're exactly right, and you think of like all of those, in our traditional, communities and tribal communities and stuff like that. It's like same sort of thing. Like the bank slalom to me, and I remember saying this to boys, is kind of like a rite of passage. Like it's like you kind of got to run it, and when you run the race, it's kind of your however you fall. It doesn't matter, like wherever you land in the standings and stuff like that. You're trying to make it to Sunday. That's kind of the task, but it's like it's a rite of passage. You did it. Like you were in it. It's like the lottery sets it up, everything. I have so much respect. I think I did the fourth one that was ever there, was the first time I did it. It's like fourth or fifth year.
Okay, I overlooked, and I didn't peel back the layers on this, but you mentioned that you were chasing Craig Kelly around. Did you see him on a chairlift and stuff?
Oh yeah, like it was funny because there was like, I was young enough so snowboarding started kind of like really rocking and rolling, it started getting a lot more traction. And I remember like renting the videos from the skate shop, like our local skate shop.
Renting.
Got
to return.
VHS, the whole deal. I think there was like those laser discs too. Remember the laser discs? I know, I'm old. Anyways, I'm just seeing like Kidwell and Tahoe and seeing some of the stuff Craig was putting out, and realizing that, Baker was kind of, first allowing snowboarding and all that kind of stuff. A lot of places in Canada weren't yet. And so that was kind of like one of the only places we could go. So, and I grew up in Abbotsford, right by like 5 minutes kind of from the border kind of thing. And so that was the closest mountain I could get to. And so my dad would like drop us off on the other side of the border, and we'd like thumb it up to Baker and come back down. And I had a, crew of Canadians that we, kind of, that was our home mountain. Mark Friesen was a part of old pro back, Canadian guy. And, Risto and all those guys would come down when they were starting, and Baker was kind of gathering steam for that. But way before that, it was like, I was like 12, 13 years old, and it was like, those big, thick, Sims, so old, Sorels, duct tape, my feet are so messed up from that. I believe that those 10 years of just like,
Never did recover.
Never did recover. Those Sims bindings of it was so gnarly. But yeah, that was like a time where Temple and Jamie and, Tex and, I'm going to go through a few people like I don't want to forget some of the main dudes, but they'll come. Anyways, that crew, and Craig obviously was really shaping snowboarding. Like he was the first kind of expression at some level that was like, whoa, like he's just that much better than everybody else. So there was a lore at Baker that if you spotted him even riding, right, it was just like, holy, there's Greg, and as a kid, I just looked for him every time I went up. And if I could get like on a rotation on, chair 6 or something, or doing gobbles or, sticky trees or something like that, I would just start to try to, and there's no way, right? He's just like, wow, doing this whole thing. And I'm just tomahawking everywhere and like trying to figure out, but slowly that started to move along as seasons went by. And I just found myself kind of as this sort of shy, insecure kid hanging out at the banker, shop down in Glacier, and became really close with Marcella and the gang and Bobby and all them that owned it for years. And that was like a hangout, right? And so all the pros would come down, and, they would have a photo that get published, and they put it on the wall. And it was just this like, oh, I'm going to get a photo on the wall someday, And, slowly I actually became quite close with Craig's sister, Jillian. And so Jillian was my age. She was also shredding with this kind of crew that we had with a couple Canadians, a couple Americans, and we'd all meet down there. And so I remember the first time I got to go to like Craig's, and Kelly Jo had bought a house and stuff like that, and they were having a party, and I got to go to that. And I was like, holy shit, keep it together. And then, one of the most epic memories I have of that kind of period of time was I went to a Ranquet party, which was like known to be, and I think like Cersei and everybody was there, and like goes way back.
Edgy crew.
And I was terrified of Ranquet, like just terrified. Like I think it's like unpredictable, like I'm going to get beat up or thrown up, and why am I here kind of thing. And he turned to me, he came in, he's like, yo, or something. And someone said something. He's like, I think I saw you out there riding or whatever. And he goes, open that closet there. And I kick myself for not keeping this. But he said, just grab one, dude. He's like, take it. He's like, they're a little bit broken, but no big deal. And I open his like 30 GNS. Remember when he had a GNS Pro model, a GNS, Gordon and Smith, Mike Ranquet, and he gave me one. And I rode that thing until the edges like popped out, like they were like hanging, and I'm gluing them back in with vices and stuff, because I was like, oh my God, I got this board for Rick. Anyways, I don't know where it was, but it was such a beautiful time of snowboarding. And obviously at the centerpiece of that was the LBS. And I, at that time, as many like young boys and teenagers and all that, you're skateboarding and snowboarding, they saved my life. Like I had beautiful parents and they were amazing, but I lived Abbotsford was not a great place to live at that point of my childhood. So the pressures at school and the bullying and the gangs and all that you just lived in fear all the time. And my family was, as families do, they have their stuff and things that they go through. And so it was a little bit unpredictable sometimes, and our life did go through some turns and twists. And so I remember like longing for belonging, right? Longing for connection and longing for like, hey, this is kind of something I can identify with, and it's like that feeling of showing up at the skate park and you get the tap, people tapping because you did something and you're like, oh, okay, I think I'm belonging here or whatever it is. And it was like for snowboarding, that was me. And it kept me out of so much shit, like so much, like I had, like the past that I could be on now from that era, when I look back at it, and those that ran, a lot of my friends that we grew up with were like, gosh, we fucking barely made it out of there alive, kind of feeling. And shredding was at the heart of that for sure. And so this culture and this way of being, it's so much more deeper than the business, I guess, end of things, And so when we're, and that part of it is a big deal. Like I have a job because of that. And you have to play the game within those kind of things. But just like you were saying, I forget how you said it, but I just like within our culture, I think the thing that, and Billy said it really good on his podcast, on the bomb holder, he said like, how do you say it? He just like if we have people that are running these companies and steering the wheel of the culture from a market side and all that stuff that have nothing to fucking do with snowboarding, that don't know the feeling of riding fresh pow or like connecting with your homies or looking at bottom line spreadsheets and stuff like that, our culture will deplete. It totally will. It'll mutate into something that it's probably not supposed to. And then people will be confused by it, almost. And so I think we're at a time where we're seeing like the importance of, having TMs that are like, solid, you and we do have those. I think of Sweeney, I think of the North,
Alex Pash.
Yeah, Pashley, and like all those dudes, they just carry this like nut, like I know there's people I'm not remembering, but we have this like fucking incredible group of people that are leading right now in snowboarding that I think we're in actually a really cool spot, to be honest, because I think those decisions about like not just pushing who has got the biggest following and like have all the numbers and that posts all the time and that it's just like blasting their gram and all that kind of stuff and TikTok and whatever, and that's all part of it. I get it. But there's a way in which you can show up in that's, I think, I don't know, just a little bit more authentic, that represents more of who this culture is. And a lot of times I don't think people have, I'm sounding so old right now, but a lot of times people don't have the history of what the culture has brought, and what the roots of that, and why people are attracted to it in the first place, I guess you could say. And I believe that in our leadership on a lot, I think of Seth, like at Volcom, he's such a, like watching him TM his crew and all this, like he just gets it, he just gets, and he's fighting for it. That's the thing, they're in positions where they're fighting for it. They're fighting to not succumb to the stuff. And I think it's kind of a beautiful place right now.
I love that conversation, by the way. I'm into this, you could say, because I feel most team managers right now, not all, there's definitely some, I'm not going to start mentioning names, but like that, if you work for a snowboard company that's owned by snowboarders, like something like Ashbury, you know what I mean? It's always in the best interest of snowboarding. Yeah. But snowboarding has grown so much, and it's turned into a lot of these brands have corporate interest because they are publicly traded companies. Of course. And so if you're a team manager of a publicly traded company, you have to do this dance where you are doing the best you can, 50%, towards the company, but 50% what's in the best interest for snowboarding.
Yeah.
And you have to play that dance, and that's your role as a team manager is to take a strong stance when you're in those weird boardrooms and be like, no, like this is where we draw the line.
Yeah.
And if you can't be that voice, snowboarding will change and mutate into something that it's not supposed to be because you're not doing your job.
Yeah, totally.
And if you're always if you're the people pleasing type person and more of like a yes man to your boss, and you never want to do the pushback because you're only looking for, maybe that little raise or whatever. You got to look at yourself and go like, at the end of this whole thing called life, would you have rather snowboarding looked like X or what it could be in the future? And once you remove the history, the roots, like why snowboarding is so special to begin with, once you remove that, what is it?
Yeah.
And I think that like when you get older in life, you look at someone, let's say like your grandfather or an uncle or some guy at the grocery store, but there's something about that individual that you really looked up to.
Yeah.
Something about him. And you're like, that person made an impact on my life.
Yep.
When you get older, I feel like most people ask the question, I wonder who influenced that person to become that person.
Totally.
And there's probably like key players that shaped those individuals to be such amazing humans.
Totally.
And the Jamie Lyns of the world and the Travis Rices of the world, etc., wouldn't exist without the mentorship of snowboarders who love snowboarding. And it's like those individuals are such beautiful minds for not just snowboarding, but on our short time on Earth, those people have had ripple effects that have pushed people to join a community like snowboarding, to go into nature, to set some time for them and their family to go to a ski resort and go rip it up for a weekend, because going on the chairlift and having a shitty conversation, even in the sleeting rain, is better than sitting at home, flicking through Instagram.
For sure. Yeah. 100%. 100%. And the beautiful thing about, and everyone's going to define snowboarding in a different way kind of thing, but that's the beauty, like the beauty of it. There's so much, I think part of like that influence of, our culture, it will always have that tension and the split interest. Of course, that's part of it. We got to dance with that. It's there. But then I think sometimes when we're too focused on that, we don't see how much space there is in like on the expressional level or the accessibility or like how we interact with snowboarding. It doesn't have to be like this crazy, like, Travis level all the time, it's so wide, it's so open, it's so inclusive. It's like, that's why skateboarding is such a great reference, because the skate park, it was always this like, it was always, for me growing up anyways, a skate park represented like most of the time safety. Sometimes if like really rough people were coming around, you're like, terrified and running, and you're picking up your skater fights, lots of good fights anyways. But on the most part, it was like, I knew that when I would go to the skate park, it was people with common value, common interests, common stuff. And snowboarding is just like that. It's like everyone's expressing themselves in a certain way that we all get stoked on, like whether that's the simplest thing to the craziest trick. And I don't know. There's not a lot of spaces in the world that allow you to just kind of be that. And I think our culture has that. It has that potion in it, that kind of.
I like that word, potion.
Yeah.
I like that you said though that there was one point in your life where you wanted, you were longing for that sense of community and belonging. And I feel like lots of snowboarders, skateboarders, action sports enthusiasts, that's what they were looking for. They're looking for their club.
Totally.
And once you find that community and you find like your home, you're like, this is it. These are my people.
Totally.
I love being on the tow rope, the chairlift. I love hiking this little hill to this box. I love riding powder. I love park jumps, whatever you love.
Totally.
You find that, and then a lot of people get a bit older.
Yeah.
And they close that page, and then they have an identity crisis because they were somebody and they found their community, and now they no longer have that.
Yeah.
And they no longer feel like they're a part of that anymore. And so I urge people to not close that and like keep it open, like go a couple times a year.
Yeah.
I have so many friends that have gotten older now and they're just like, I stopped snowboarding.
Totally.
But man, I miss it. I'm like, you don't need to do tricks anymore. You don't need to prove anything. It's a different, you're in a different journey now in snowboarding where it's not about the tricks and showing up to the park and proving yourself. It's about setting aside time for yourself to go snowboarding where you know that you belong up there.
That's
and
right.
it's like, I feel like a lot of people push snowboarding out of their life where it's like, I love when I see those older people that are still like, I'm going to make some time to get out there a couple times a year and to go rip. Because as soon as you strap back on and you're on the chairlift and you're with your homies, you're like, God, this is a good idea.
It's such a good
Even if it's a
idea.
sheet of ice and you board slide all the way down.
It totally is. It totally is. Yeah, man. That is, you got it. Yeah, I hope to do that until I'm 80.
All right, we got a Patreon question from Alexander Sandal. He says, "Do you have a favorite photo, Chad, that you've ever taken?"
Damn. Yeah, I do. I have a few, but can I say two?
Of course.
I
don't think that Alexander's that.
Yeah.
He's like, no,
just one, dude. Mr. Sandal. It's funny, like, for sure, all the ones that are personal to me, like the tying in of certain like relationships that I have, are a big deal to me. So I really cherished the years that I spent documenting Roman and DCP and, you know, like all the Wildcats and all that stuff when we made the last movie. And I think there was something about that those images became very timeless for me because there was such depth of relationship there. And so one specific one was a cover with Devin on King Snow coming through his own like spray in Japan. And it's a powerful photo. It's like one of my favorite photos that I've taken. But because it was Devin and the way that he had to trust, because he was going to get I was like, I'm going to get hit. Like I know this is going to be a good shot, but I'm willing to like either get smoked or run over. And so I remember how I positioned myself, even dug my little pit and stuff. I'm like, brother, you know, you're coming at me. Just, you know what to do. He's like a master at his craft, you know? And, that photo really, like, that's one of my most iconic photos that stick with me. And that part of that's that relationship and a lot of stuff with the Yes Guys. And then I would say one of my favorite photos was with Travis a couple years ago. And it was one of these, like, he has like, I haven't worked with him a ton, but I worked with him the past couple years in NST stuff, obviously. And we began to shoot. I had a really good season with him. Not last year, but the year before. And we got a cover with the Velvet Castle pillow line. And I think it's impressive and it's a beautiful photo and it's like stunning. But I think the process that you get brought in with him is like, because when you get a phone call or like when I see his name come up on my phone, it like I go into like full cold sweats because it's serious. Like it's like you're like, do I pick that up? Like what's on the other side of that? You know, kind of thing. Because you know you're gonna get into like just royal, like it's gonna be just insane. Whatever's on the other side of that, and he's very calculated and he's so creative and he takes what he does really like passionately, and working with someone like that is to me was such a thrill, like was such like I don't know, like as a photographer it was like it pushed me, but at the same time to create with someone that you knew that like that turn that he's going to do on that, it's just no one's ever going to see that again like that. And so him doing what he did, partly was like 4 minutes and something, his whole line, but I knew the section. Like it was one of those ones where sometimes I'll look at something, I'm like, maybe this is going to be good. And then in post, I'll see something or whatever. But this was the one, like at that moment, this is going to be, I'm going to pull back. I'm going to shoot it vertical. It will be a cover. Like it was one of those, like I called it. And he did exactly what I thought he was going to do at the exact same spot. Like he had already, like we didn't even communicate, right? He's just like knows how to do all that stuff. And the energy that you get caught up in that, allows your creativity to just go to a whole nother level, you know? And so I think those two are my favorite. I got a lot of bunch, but those two are my favorite.
Actually, we had a follow-up question for that from another Patreon member, Thomas Porquette. He said the same thing. He wanted you to elaborate on shooting that photo of Travis and like a bit of the process or whatever, which is cool to hear you organically bring that up.
Yeah,
because
cool.
I mean, shooting with Travis as a photographer, myself being in the field a lot of the time, shooting a slash or a turn when you're coming down a ridge, there's always that one spot where it's like, that's the obvious spot. But once you start billy goating and smashing into pillows and you're riding for 4 minutes, sometimes you kind of go offline or you fall.
Totally.
But not when you're with Travis.
No.
It's just like, where do I turn? Right here. Yeah. Wow. You get that,
true.
Chad?
Yeah.
Just like fucking
Bing.
got it.
It's the
Still
truth.
the goat.
Yeah, dude, the guy, yeah, he's so, yeah, it just, you're totally right. And that whole, like how that all came together and how the conditions lined up and the weather and Austin riding with him, the energy those two share, like it was, I will never forget that day ever. Like it was just I remember turning to Lucy after it was done. It was like I think the whole line was over 4 minutes. I don't know exactly, but he got to the bottom and Gab had flown the drone back, parked it. So then it went silent and we're all sitting on our little, like, you know, I make my little zone on the Barbie. I was 7 kilometers away, you know, like we were on the opposite ridge and we're all shooting, like I'm shooting long land. The drone has like a miles to go, you know, so he's zipping back. And we all just land, and Lucy just goes, "That may have been the greatest line of all time," like that. And I was like, I think we just witnessed, you know, history, like kind of thing. And we just didn't have any words because it was insane. And anybody's watched it, it's crazy.
I feel like every single photographer and videographer that's ever shot with Travis for an extended period of time, you know, you do a full season with them, I'm sure that comes out a lot of people's mouth. Like, you know, you're like,
absolutely,
that was the best thing that I've ever seen anyone do.
Totally.
Ever.
I don't think
that line is insane. It's so long that
long.
like at one point, like I just don't understand the stamina. And I think like for people to wrap their heads around like that, there's so many. If you bounce left, you go into a hole. If you bounce right, you go into a hole. You have to go straight off that. Like, just the fact he just can somehow find his way down one of the most complex lines of all time. It's not an open, like, you're not in Alaska riding, you know, thousands of feet of fresh pow vertical at like a consistent pitch. It's like there's just wild west little holes all over the place waiting to ruin your day. And he avoided all of them.
And just like the lining up of like, you know, I've actually just recently was thinking about, you know, this too. I was like lining up that line, first of all, getting the right conditions, right weather to shoot it, blah, blah, blah. All those things need to line up. But then knowing that he couldn't like he can't rebate that. You know what I mean? Like to Travis, that's not like it has to be clean as a whistle, like top to bottom, like no like stoppy, no, none of that. For it to be, I think, in his integrity of how he rides, it needed to be T to B, nonstop, full throttle as fast as he can go, because you're not shooting that again. You're not shooting with a track in it. You know what I mean? That's just not going to happen. So that it just like all of those things are just, I don't know. And he seems to just step up to plate all the time.
It's like a 96 stack pillow. Like most people who are on like a hill is like, dude, look at that triple stack over there. Travis is like, I think there's about 118 of them. And they're all over the place.
Yeah.
And then just takes a mental note and he's like, I got this.
It's nuts. And I mean, I don't think my nervous system would survive multiple seasons with Travis, but it's an honor to get that phone call and we'll pick up every time. So
I'd still be up there if I hit that thing. Like he fell in the first hole and we just never found him. Like he's in the middle of the fucking line. And that's why you shoot with Travis, because you're two of the best.
Oh, that's awesome.
All right, we got another question here from none other than your other son, Caleb.
Caleb.
Yo, Airtime, how's it going? Super stoked to listen to this one. Got a quick question here. Was wondering what's like the main reason that made you switch from being a pastor here in West, which a lot of people probably don't know about, to doing the retreats you're doing now, and a switch in photography from action sports, leaning more towards nature. Yeah, love you a lot. I'll see you soon. Peace.
Love you, son. What a dude.
He's a dude now.
He is a dude.
It's so.
He's always been a dude. Like, he's just always been a dude. But now, he's like super dude. Yeah.
It's wild for me, too, because
For sure.
I've known you for, let's say, 15 years.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so I've known your kids since they were like 4 and like, I don't know,
6.
how old?
Yeah. They're
What
like
are they?
19 months apart, 20 months or whatever.
Like 19 and 18, 20 and
20.
19?
Jane's 22. He's 21 and 20 right now.
Okay,
he'll
yeah,
be 22 soon.
That's like since they
Yeah.
were both 5. So it's
Totally.
like now they're like dudes. When I see them now, I'm like, what? Like I went and had beers the other day with Jaden. Dude, we're at the Dublin Gates crushing beer together. Like, hell yeah.
Well, even like last night we had this, show and stuff like that. And then the proprietor that was helping with the show and stuff, they own this really sick spot in Yaletown, and the boys were invited to come to the after party and all that. And we're partying with our kids, and like it was just like, and it was sick, like they have this, I don't know, it's cool, it's really cool. But to that question, and some people don't know this, but when we first moved to Whistler for the first 10 years out of the 21 years we were here, I took a job as an interfaith minister, so a pastor kind of role. Come from a background as theology studies and stuff like that. Always had a fascination in spirituality, but not really too keen on really tight, organized kind of religion or like certainty. This is exactly what it is. But the conversation about meaning of life and the existential questions of our existence and all that, I like to entertain and connect with. And so my role was really here in Whistler at the Millennium Place and kind of help facilitate other faith groups that would share that space, but then as well as we would run regular community gatherings and, Christmas times and all those kind of things. And it actually was an incredible way to be in Whistler, and to live in Whistler and to like enjoy Whistler, because it gave me lots of freedom. I was on the hill. I got to snowboard so much and just be with people and really care for our community from that angle, I guess you could say, and raise our kids in that. And he asked me what was my switch from that to photography. Was that?
I think it was
the
switch
retreats.
because now you've kind of maybe your spirituality has grown.
Yeah, like I think anything, like our whole, I view our life story as that is it. It's like we're writing a story, like we're writing this incredible gift of life. We get this opportunity to move through it hopefully with agency. Some people don't have that, or some people aren't in a position where they have necessarily the privilege, to live with expansive choice. And because of where we're born and North America and those kind of things, we, on the most part, most of us have a lot of space to define what we want to be and who we want to become. And I think part of that inevitable life journey is you start asking deeper questions of existence, why I'm here, what's my meaning, what's my purpose. And those have always been elements, I think, that I've had since a little kid, and since those questions and those curiosities. And so I think that, being a minister here for those first 10 years, I just outgrew, like, at some level. Like I couldn't stand on some of the things that maybe 5 years ago I was like, well, I don't know about that, and just like had different questions and saw a more expansive, I guess, view of a spiritual life, or what it means to live spiritually in this world. And then, so I started to create spaces for people to engage in maybe even a little bit more open, like conversations around meaning and purpose and healing and all those kind of things of what I think a lot of people are asking. You know, a lot of people are trying to figure out the questions of their life, you know, and what they're here for, and how to deal with transitions, and when, you know, our furious, you know, efforts to control our life path to equal A plus B plus C equals this, and then I'll have the car, and I'll have the house, and I'll have the wife, and I'll have this, and it's like this map down. I do all the right things, and that's gonna produce this result, and then I'm gonna live this way, and I've done, you know, whatever it is. And we all have that equation, which is actually a very spiritual equation. Because it's so human, then it's inevitably spiritual. Like, to be spiritual is all it is to live the human experience with consciousness, like to be conscious of your human experience, you know? And so in that form, I think that, let's say, church or gatherings in an organized way, that kind of stuff, have kind of dated themselves. Like, I think that they should move on at some level. And because now it's become so fundamentalist, and these expressions of where, like, it's been militarized almost in some ways, and used to abuse and oppress throughout, you know, history. You'd think we'd fucking learn something from that. And that obviously was never the intention, you know? And so I was just kind of looking for ways to be able to create space to still have those types of touch points available for people, and specifically for dudes. And because part of that was like, you know, but part of my own journey, I think the retreat stuff that I started doing came out of our COVID time, where a lot of people were struggling. A lot of people were confused, including myself, and wondering what was right, what was up, what's true, what's not true, all these things. And living in a sort of this pluralistic kind of society that we live in, an increasing sort of skepticism and fear and control and like all that kind of stuff, of course. And anytime you look out through history, when conspiratory thinking increases, it also brings crazy changes. Like, so there's shifts that are happening in a collective way that looks messy and chaotic, but they should, in my opinion, they should be like, okay, we've got lots of people grasping to have some type of meaning and understanding of what's going on.
Haven't a lot of civilizations collapsed over this,
Totally.
like the Roman Empire and stuff like that?
So you, like, the comparison to where we're at now in history, and again, I don't want to, like, this is not my like claim, but I can't.
History repeats itself if you're not.
Dude, if
really
you look at
aware.
the Roman Empire and you look at what's happening like right now in
yeah.
our political landscape and everything like that, society, the one anomaly that I think can't be lumped into this is the pure arrogance and delusional thinking around our environment and the relationships, so climate change and all that kind of stuff, that is actually still something that's being like denied, is just beyond my thinking. Now, the forms of what that does and the replenishing of we could talk about that all day long, but like that it's a hoax and that it's not real and all this shit and it's fabricated.
Well, it doesn't matter what your opinion is. Climate change is real because climate always changes.
Yeah. And to understand that, and it goes back to some of the things I was sharing earlier, is like to understand that mirrors the condition of humanity. Like the earth mirrors the condition of humanity. So often throughout history, you look at it. And so it's like, we have a participation with that. We have something that, both a responsibility and a relationship that needs to be, I think, redefined at the level of where we're at as humanity. Anyways, that was a lot, but
no, I agree. Like people need to look at, well, for starters, a more compassionate lens.
Yeah.
Because it's easy for the ultra rich to want to do certain things like let's not have all this cheap stuff, but then go to a second or third world country and then tell them that you're removing all this cheap stuff that they need to
100%.
survive when they're living off $5. They're like, screw you. Must be nice to have millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And like, yes, climate change is real because the climate will constantly just change on this planet.
Yep.
And there's just things that are out of our control. Like the sun having a solar flare that's a little hotter one year. Like, it's just like
Totally.
And people want to have all this scientific evidence and have it as concrete, but every 100 years, if you look at the science, most of it is all wrong.
Yeah.
And like, it's just like, humans never really know what we're doing.
Totally.
Concrete.
Yeah.
And that's where you'll go crazy trying to find concrete answers.
Totally.
And it's
so,
better to be spiritual.
Yeah.
If you're spiritual, you're a little bit more flexible with like, I don't know, even
Just
like
being
some people are like so against, they'll be a part of like an organization that's against climate change. Well, like, but then you run into them, and so they have an electric car, and they think based on their TikToks and everything and their science that they're doing a better job than the person with the gas power. But then there's somebody out there that's just like, well, what I read is that your battery is being extracted from these mines and you're actually the problem. And then neither one of them want to talk to each other and they just yell at each other. And I'm like,
totally.
And then for me, as somebody who likes to hover in the middle all the time, because I'm like,
same.
I'm bombarded with information from both angles that I'm like, I don't know the answer, but I do know the answer should be that you two should be like talking to each other
like
and then
some
finding
type of
some middle
discourse.
ground.
Yeah. The polarized, like exactly. And I think during that COVID time, back to what we're talking, is like during that time, that polarization just kept growing and growing and growing and growing. And so when the separation gets increased, especially at the level that it was, and where, it was like gnarly, and so all of a sudden you start coming up with, like, as the brain does, you come up with the meaning around this, and that leads to this, and everyone's staring at their computer screens at home to get information. And you just saw this fragmentation of society and this fearful, like just this fear, it was hard to deal with. And so just with the retreat stuff, I just was like, you know what, like there's something. The one thing that I can do and that I know I can do is I can bring some people together and we can go and take like a timeout for like 5 days. So I invited some dudes or whatever, and I say, hey, we're gonna do this. I'm just putting this out there. If you're interested, blah blah blah. And we had, immediately had like a full house right away. And I was like, okay, well that indicates for sure something that's out there, that people are longing for, that they're wanting space to kind of just like take a breath, and slow down, because everything's so quick and seems so crucial right now and urgent. And I don't think is as urgent as we think it is, And so it allowed a little bit more space for people. And for me, that was so much more powerful to do that, let's say once a year, than like, be an interfaith minister or something like that I never want to be again. But it just, those ways of being able to create ways that we can be together, that we can maybe allow some space to tap into our own journey and what's going on us, and to see that reflected in a shared journey with other people, especially amongst dudes. We're not talking about, talk about all my stuff and like, crying with each other, and those things can happen because that's human life, but it's more about like, we're so just not that different from each other. We're just not. And so when you can create a space that emphasizes that's a shared humanity rather than a polarized humanity, and, the phones kind of get put away. It's like a time to digitally detox. There's like this space that we create from the noise, that all of a sudden when we get down to that slower kind of rhythm, probably I would say a more human rhythm than the kind of grind culture that we're usually in, all of a sudden we were able to be like, oh, I actually see this dude as like a human, like he's not the guy that just drives the Audi and like probably makes more money than me and like, it's like, he's not a threat. He's like, we're just doing this life, and he's got a version and I got a version, and cool. We get to like kind of kind of do this together at some level, you know? And I think when we share our stories and we share a bit of life together, whether that's over a long meal or whether that's a big day on the mountain or that's, you know, at a retreat space in Soul Atrium that, you know, we run, you know, in the falls, whatever those are, what brings us back to those things, or what nurtures us, I guess, at a deeper level, is the fact that we are being seen, we're being heard, we're sharing an experience with other people that is just part of our fucking DNA. So it makes us feel more human and grounded. And then outside of that, it's like you leave with a bit more permission and probably a bit more compassion towards yourself and the way you're going and the way the world is, and maybe a little bit more lighter, you know, to your community that you're at. And I think more than any time ever, like, I think that practice, I guess you say, to me, it's a practice of retreating. It's not to escape. It's not to like, oh, I don't want to deal with that. It's actually, there's so much to deal with. If you don't, you're just reacting to your life all the time. So if you can create space, whatever that's a personal practices, or you do an annual retreat every year, or you take time out where you put that fucking black mirror thing down and you're able to disconnect from the noise and from the inundation of fear and keeping up with everything, that's whatever that is defined for you. There's something, I think, pretty magical that comes online, and that's like, wow, I just slept for the first time for a long time. Like, that's a win. Like, if you took 4 days out and you were like, went on this retreat, and let's say you did some breath work and some meditation or stretched a bit, like, or did some yoga or whatever it is, and you're like feeling kind of chill, and then all of a sudden, you know, 9 times out of the 10, you know, you'll hear people leave like a space like that or a retreat that we've run out in Tofino, and they're like, I fucking slept for the first time in like 6 months. Like, I had the first night of sleep in 6 months that was like uninterrupted. You know, your body wants to do that. Your natural thing wants to do that. We just don't create a lot of space intentionally for those kind of things, you know? And so, and then when you hear people walking through and holding certain parts of like their lives and walking through whatever it's marriage stuff or like changes of life, divorces, money things, all that, all of a sudden your story is their story too, you know, like you're not so different. And it breaks down, and we're able to have those conversations that, you know, I may totally like most of the time that guys, you know, from those retreats or those spaces are coming from totally different worlds, like in totally different backgrounds. But for some reason, you know, when you kind of create a space that's open and connected and like safe and like whatever, it's like, yeah, you start to see, okay, I'm not different. I'm not that different than any of these people, you know, and I'm interpreting in a certain way. And I could probably just let my fucking jets cool a little bit, you know, and maybe accept some people, because probably that non-acceptance and my fear of that difference of that other person is probably my own projection of my own non-acceptance of who I am, of my own shit, of my own journey or whatever. Right. And we're always doing that, you know? And so it's kind of a cool way to, I don't know, like just cultivate community and connection rather than sort of maybe what I was doing when we first moved here and stuff like that. So that would be answering my son's question, I think. in a roundabout way. But
no, lots of good points there. I mean, the fear that your phone projecting is crazy, because across the board, the world is the best it's ever been. There's the least amount of wars. There's the least amount of poverty. Clean drinking water for not everybody. But we're moving in a direction where thousands of years ago, they could only wish to have
100%.
a roof, hot water, clean water, a warm bed to sleep in.
Yeah.
That wasn't a thing not even that long ago. So we live in the greatest time that's ever existed on Earth.
Yep.
As far as we know.
Yeah.
Yet there's so many people that can't even take a good night fucking sleep. They can't even sleep because if you turn on your phone, it's bombarded with like all of this. If you're not careful, because your algorithm is very sensitive to what you watch.
Totally.
So if you're somebody who is interested in watching fear-related stuff, your algorithm is going to feed you that, and you're going to be trapped in fear. Like, this is happening in Russia, this is happening in Ukraine, and you, for the first time, have a live feed of all of the bullshit that's going on around
man.
the entire planet.
Yeah.
So you wonder why there's buildings falling and this happening. It's like if you had a live feed what was happening in the 1800s,
dude,
that live feed would be fucked up, dude.
Well, I mean, not to like, yeah, I mean, I love talking about this stuff, but it's like, yeah, you think of like the epidemic of, anxiety to, mental health. Like if we want to go into the mental health area and these diagnoses, and I get it. It's all real. And it's the way we were interpreting our process right now and all that kind of stuff. But you cannot deny that when the role of the always connected stream started within humanity, we had an increase of mental health issues across the board because we are not designed to process that level of information. We're just not at that pace to be able to your nervous system to bring in inundated of trauma into your psyche in vivid ways and in like blatant ways, coded with, is that true? Is it not true? Like all of the things that are in that mixture of what we get on a daily basis. It's no wonder that we can't sleep. It's no wonder that we're suffering from epidemic portions of anxiety and depression. It's no wonder that our attention on things to complete things to do as a job are gone out of the window. It's like these things are contributing to our health.
But I'm throwing this in there with that. You mix that with eating food that's not even real. Like from the first ingredient to the last ingredient, a lot of people consume, like if you go to Walmart and you get all your food, yeah, of course, there's a couple things there that are fine. Yeah. But for the vast majority of like produce or anything there, it's like absolute bullshit.
Yeah.
And so you're eating nothing. Yeah. Lots of people don't even drink that much water. Then you don't go outside because you live in a concrete jungle, so you're never immersed in nature. And then you're also staring at a screen all day.
Yeah.
I love the nervous system touch because I never really think about that. But like,
yeah. Well, even like what's an interesting, and again, like I want to preface that like by no means any of these like statements are me like I'm right, about this at all.
Either, both of us.
Yeah. Like I'm curious about what's unfolding, and I'm curious because of my own life and the health of my family and the friends around me and stuff, and just noticing those connection pieces. And for sure, we're getting probably the last, I would say 2 to 3 years, the first like conclusive types of science that are showing the effects of it on our nervous systems and on our mental health, and the influence that that's having and the pace that we're moving and living at. And I think there's this kind of fantasy that maybe something will come along to solve that and correct that, but it ain't. Like it's freaking running, and it's just going to get $1 trillion industry. And you top on like a society that we're in, and I'm excited about it, and I'm also terrified about it. But you bring in AI, you bring in all these tools that are happening that are allowing for us not to think even remotely, at some level where it would actually feed and contribute to our well-being mentally. We're getting further and further away of things, and so I want to be in this conversation, not to say that I have the answers, but to discover through people that are having it, and just, I think it's an important one to have. So I'm stoked that we're touching into it,
Let me ask you this very open-ended question, but what are the benefits to someone who's not spiritual? What are the benefits of exploring spirituality?
Yeah. Oh, I think that like we'll all bring up, like if you hear the word spiritual, we'll all recall or bring to mind our reference for what that means to us. Okay. So first and foremost, there's going to be an interpretation that we make about even that word, and so when I say like spiritual, or a spiritual life or whatever that is, that's not like, that's actually something that I don't think you cannot not be. Like if you're human and you have breath coming, in and out of your lungs, you are a spiritual being. You are someone that possesses something there's something deeper within who you are that calls you to explore. that calls you to find meaning. And that could look so differently, like so differently for everybody. But it would be hard pressed for me. Like, sure, there's people that have just like written that shit off. I don't want to fucking even look at that. But at the essence, being spiritual is like pursuing pleasure, pursuing joy, like answering what you want to do with your life, like it's being human. I think that I'd rather switch that word to what it means to be really human and try to ask your question what that means. Like, ask yourself that question throughout your life, what that means. So what does it mean in our time right now to be truly human? Is truly human being this like a kind of like a machine, like working all the time, grinding, surviving, like just like, trying to one up everything, like keeping up with all the stuff, get the money, get the stuff, whatever. Is that truly the way to be human? Is it? I mean, you have to answer that question. So when I think that that's like the pursuit of the spiritual life, I think that everybody's doing it in their way of what that looks like in the lifetime they've been given. So I try to keep that word like off the side because it comes in impactful. And being spiritual isn't doing like yoga and like that doesn't make you spiritual. I know a lot of horrible people that do yoga. That are like more competitive about their yoga than they are about, anything else. Anyways, that just because you're doing these things doesn't make you spiritual, that doesn't make a spiritual life. But, if you're taking time to cultivate calm, cultivate like a slowness of how you view the world, of moving away from being reactionary to more responsive, in your life, I think everyone could agree that they would like more space and capacity in their life at this point, and especially within our society, and would like to cool the jets on maybe the stuff that, triggers us, that brings out those answers that we don't have answers for, or whatever it is. I think that any leaning towards that is a spiritual life. So when I look at history, what has helped serve whatever religion, whatever like wisdom tradition, whatever you want to call it, that people have formalized and made like, this is the way, follow this kind of thing. There's a common, and I was fortunate because my studies like in theology and stuff were around the perennial tradition. And the perennial tradition is basically finding the common theme through all the major kind of monolithic, like one God kind of religions that we've had. Monolithic.
Is
Thank
that?
you.
I don't know if that is.
I'm terrible.
Mono means one though.
Mono
right?
one. So we'll just go with that.
Okay.
And then that spread to looking at the other ones, but the major hitters, like the ones that have been, formed throughout thousands, hundreds and thousands of years. And so Buddhism, Christianity, Sufism, Hinduism, like all the main kind of ones, and you got Judaism and all that. And there's a common thread through all of them. And so to me, that's like, okay, there's a common thread that runs through all of these groups of people throughout history that have been searching for kind of answering the deeper questions of our existence. So what did they do to help support that journey? And it's not like we're going to come to the end of the right thing. Like the Buddha didn't come to the end of his life and go, I have all the answers, not at all. The life of, the Jesus thing is a funny thing because it's like the representation of who Jesus is, so to speak, through like, let's say the Christian church or the evangelical couldn't be more further away from the essence of who he was as whether you believe fact or fiction or whatever of the words that were written about him. But he was someone that exemplified a way to be human. That's what it was. Like it wasn't more or like all of those kind of things. And we've interpreted it and weaponized it and like made it control people and all that shit. And it's like, when you actually go to the essence of it, the dude was like insanely amazing. He'd be a guy that I'd love to hang with and watch him move around this world that we're living in, because he fought for that underdog, he saw through the bullshit. He called through the powers at B and said, fuck this empire. This is not the way to run it. Like I have a lot of respect for that, you know?
He's the team manager who's sticking up for snowboarding.
That's Jesus. But it's true. And we're not having these kind of conversations that allow people to go, oh, like I don't have to know all this stuff, or I don't have to join a club, you know, or like what I mean by club or a church or a belonging group or whatever that forms your like thinking. You know, it's like, no, this is something we can interact with in a way that benefits both our lives and humanity around us. And so I think good spirituality always makes better humans and better communities. And so I want to see that happen in my own life and other people. And so I'm always kind of trying to like pick into that world of just like, okay. And when you look at the history and look at all these traditions that have done it before us, when I say this stuff to you, including like obviously the indigenous traditions of our past, and what we can learn from is like, there was some simple elements. I know I won't name them all, but things like they slowed down. There was always times within their weekly rhythm or community rhythm where they were still, whether that was a sweat, whether that was, you know, a pilgrimage, whether that was a meal, whether that was something that iconically a Sabbath, you know, that was every sort of Saturday, Sunday kind of, we termed it, or whatever. No one worked, no one did anything. There was these things that were in the rhythms of those traditions that allowed for people to be more human, I guess you could say. And I think that we can benefit a lot from that. I think we can benefit a lot from learning from some of those. So finding ways where we can slow down together, and that can be camping, that can be, you know, whatever it is, but to where we're listening to both the people around us and ourselves. And you can accomplish that by mindful movement or doing yoga or doing, you know, breath, like getting connected to your life force and all that kind of stuff. It's not woo-woo stuff. It's like you're doing it anyways. You just start to pay attention a little more intentionally to it, you know, and that will provide health for you. That will provide expansiveness towards, you know, your own existence. And like meditation, you know, like I always, like someone says the word meditation, I'm always, you know, people go, oh, fuck, I couldn't do that. I tried that once, you know, it's kind of the response. I've tried that. Didn't work for me. You know, it's like, no, it probably didn't work in the form that you're being served up on your app or whatever it is. But there's probably a way that you're already being meditative. So let's talk about that. So that might be taking a solo run, you know, to yourself and just dropping into that experience. That's a meditation. You know, it's just that we've put all this shit around it that keeps people from experiencing it at a real human, like accessible level, I guess you could say. So those the retreats or the spaces, or even like this show that we did last night, we included that. Like we included this, you know, the beginning where we all gathered. We just kind of just took like some breaths together, and it was funny because everyone just was there. You know, they just dropped into the space, and I don't know. It was, yeah. I don't know if that answers the question, but
one thing that I've realized, or what just the folder that opened up in my brain when you were talking there, was the importance of, we've been talking about community a lot here, but there's a bit of a disconnect with community because I feel like a lot of people, especially in first world countries, get this idea from their phone or from the computer or from a magazine or a movie that they want to live this life like James Bond or like Michael Jordan, or they have a figure and then they come up with this life.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, so I want the car. I want to be by the ocean front. I want to dress like this. I want to have friends like this. And they have this big vision. But it's a self-absorbed vision. Mm-hmm. And for the longest period of time, hundreds of thousands of years, you were born, you had a role in your community, and you would fulfill that role. And then you would learn from the elders in your community who would share stories and stuff like that and teach you how to cook. Mm-hmm. And there was this beautiful cycle of life.
Totally.
And you always had a role, and you never really, and you were always busy working with tasks and things to do and chores.
Yeah.
And there wasn't this like, I have 4 hours of freedom, I'm going to scroll through a phone all day. And like, there wasn't that time.
Totally.
But now if you get to that certain level of success and you finally hit that marker and you got that dream penthouse and you got the boat and the car and the beautiful girl, Well, when the beautiful girl's gone, you're sitting in the penthouse all alone. Your mom lives halfway across the country in the house that she was born in by herself.
Yep.
You know, and then like what's that like? Like it's the first time in human history where it's like and I'm guilty of it. And maybe that's why I bring this up occasionally. Is like my mom and dad live in Winnipeg.
Yeah.
They're getting older.
Yeah.
Life's not slowing down. It seems like it's speeding up. Every time I go back, I'm like, damn, they're getting like old.
Yeah.
Older. And I'm like, I need to go back and like be a part of that and not just like one day my sister's going to call me and be like, yeah, mom's moving into a house. And then we see her a couple times a year. And that's the new cycle of life that we've formed. And that's what what we've visualized and conceptualized as the key to success is I live on the West Coast by myself. My mom lives over here and we don't hang out, but like, thanks, Mom. It's like, I don't know. There's a lot to learn in those later years from those elders.
Yeah.
And back in the day, it would have been a community of elders. They would have been a bunch and they would be teaching your kids things.
Yeah.
Now your kids hang out with their grandparents a couple times a year,
Totally.
maybe. And it's a beautiful thing when you do have kids and you see your kids interacting with their grandparents. There's this insane connection that I see with like my sister's kids and my mom. My mom's with them all the time and she's teaching them things that like they're not going to learn from my sister because my sister's working. Yeah. So there's like this, I don't know, the circle of life was this beautiful thing that we almost perfected. Yeah. And now we're taking things apart from it that I think that are really valuable.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I don't know when the bomb dropped for that to switch and change and stuff, but I mean, it definitely
James Bond,
dude, for sure. But it, even the like question of who am I and what am I here for? That question was answered for you in those times. You didn't ask, like, even just like I was just down in Peru for this shoot in end of April, May. And I was again, like in moving, it was such a rad trip and learned a lot. And one of the things that stood out to me was like, we were within these communities that had like that, they were still within that rhythm. And their questions are so utterly different than the questions we have. We've put at the forefront of our thing is like, you can be anything you can be, if you just put hard work and just become that guy. Hard work.
Work hard.
Yeah, you can get it.
Every day.
Yeah, every day. You work and then you're going to, whatever it looks like to you.
And then you'll be happy.
And then you'll be happy. And it's like you go into these, villages and you go this community sort of tribal, more, ways of being together. And you see the evident happiness, the evident freedom, the evident connection that belongs there. And you're kind of caught up in it because it's a bit foreign to your own existence, because we don't live in that type of mind frame. Like we don't live in that type of interaction with each other. It has been like especially North America and West, kind of the first developing world, we have put the values lean towards the individual, not the collective. We've switched, we've prized or whatever, idolized the individual life at such a level that it is put everybody and everything in competition towards each other. And we're not supporting each other. So of course we all feel alone, disconnected, not seen, only the strong will survive, kind of thing. Like if I'm really gnarly and I can do it and I can just run over people and just make my way, for hell or high water, I'm going to fucking do this, and it's like you leave a wake of destruction behind you. And we don't even care how people, got affected by your interaction with them or that bad business deal or whatever it is. We just look over. I mean, we've got people running for fucking, the craziest positions of power that are like teenage boys talking.
And girls.
Yeah.
I'm not giving either one the W there. I'm sorry.
Like
that's the best you could come up with.
I'm just saying this is my observation, but I think that what we're seeing right now mirrors us. Like they're reflecting something back towards the condition of even at the most element levels in our own lives, like in our own interactions of our own communities where it's okay to just like have no integrity, It's okay to lie like a motherfucker, you know? It's okay to like treat people poorly and then just like, oh, okay, you know, all that. We've just...
As long as you're getting it.
Yeah, as long as you're getting
and
it.
hot
you're-
chicks
yeah.
like you and you got money. And then you get out of the car and you're like, everyone's looking at me
The
and
dream.
think that I'm
It's the
sick.
dream. It's the
That's
dream.
the dream.
Yeah, it's the dream. And then
James Bond.
Yeah, James Bond. James Bond. But yeah, you end up, and then I think that that's kind of that false story, and it's a bit cliche to even like, talk about, like I hear this all the time, but it's like, there is something so true about the fact that you know, in the efforts to find your life, you lose it because you just are constantly internally focused on your own condition, your own, you know, wealth, your own like pie in the sky, whatever version that looks like to you, that to look at your neighbor as an equal or as someone that actually is like a part of who you are. And that's interconnected so deeply that the way I treat you is actually how I will treat myself is huge. It's massive. And we don't have that. We say the way I have to treat myself good, I have to treat myself good, or, you know, protect this thing. And anything that comes up against that, I'm just going to fucking push it out the door. And there's no way we're going to create, you know, connection and community around that. You know, it's hard. I don't have a solution, but it's like, I see it happening. I think that like when I look at my boys' generation and that like, and maybe my parents said the same thing about my generation when I was that, but there's something in me that like this younger generation knows how to do relationship. I'm seeing this anyways, and I'm learning from it being together and moving through the world together and breaking down to the simplest things of like, just, being together in nature and hanging out and not pursuing maybe the dollar bills as much as it is, because they've seen now these generations chase it are miserable and mad and bitter and are fighting and all that. And they're just like, fuck this. Like, let's accept everybody. Let's like figure this out, you know? And there's this openness that I see in this younger generation that is really encouraging to me. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that I would hope that it becomes a world where your cell phone is a tool.
Yeah.
But it's not like your sidekick.
Yeah.
And so you use it when you need to make a phone call or you do a post for your business. And then you check it out for a second. No way, it's what's his name's birthday.
Totally.
Cool. And then you get off.
Totally.
But when there's a point where I think everybody knows, or everybody who's listening has been in that like cycle of, I'm on my phone too much.
Yeah.
And you're
totally.
like, oh, this tool isn't serving me.
Yeah.
I'm drinking too much. This tool isn't serving
Totally.
me. I'm hanging out with this negative friend that's brought me down for the last 10 years. Like, this tool is not serving me anymore.
Yeah.
Or like you're in a dead end job that you've hated forever.
Yeah.
And you're like, I gotta rip the Band-Aid off. You know, I only got
Here we
30
go.
more years of life to live.
Totally.
Like, let's go. Let's switch it
Totally.
up.
Totally.
And here to that.
Yeah.
A transition here quickly.
Yeah.
We got another Patreon question. Thank you to the Patreon members. You guys are the absolute best. And basically everything that you're either watching or hearing this on has been in some way, shape, or form. Your dollars have gone towards that. So just know that I'm not buying shit with that money. It's all going towards this. And hopefully this year we're going to get a couple staff members. You know, we just need to bring in a couple more dollars. But after this show, woo, buddy, we're going to be good. Subscribe today for as little as $4 a day. All right, we got a question here from none other than the homie from NST, Ryan Cruz.
Yes, right.
The man literally has an aura around him. He is a special one, no doubt. I find myself wondering what someone with such great outward presence tells themselves when looking inwards to have that mindset.
Wow. Whoa, Cruz.
Deep.
I'm pretty convinced that we give out what we want. Like, I'm convinced that what we put out in the world is the thing that we actually long for in our own lives. So I think a lot of that, when I think about my life or I go inward, it's like, I want to make sure people that rub up against me or come into my, world or whatever, and whether it's a first time or a second time or a third time, the best that I know how, and obviously definitely not perfect at this, but I want them to feel a sense of acceptance, because I want to feel accepted. I want I want people to feel seen because I want to be seen by people. You know, I want to maybe have a sense of, you know, give a sense of love and importance and care because I want empathy in my own life. I want people to treat me with empathy. And so I think when I look inward, my question is like especially with relationships or how I move through the world, it's like I have a definitive choice. I can be a total asshole. Like I can make that choice. That's in all of us and all that kind of stuff. Or I can cultivate what I actually kind of want in my life. And what I want, what I'm going to give out is what I'll receive in my life. So I think, and my parents did a good job at, I think this, you know, but since I was little, I always had this conviction of that, if I'm not in tune with what I want in my own life, then how I'm operating in my outward life will be messy. Like it'll be confusing. But if I'm clear on the fact that it feels good to be around people that see you, it's just plain fact. Like no one can say, like, you walk into a room. It's like, I always think of the old show Cheers, you know, and Norm would walk in and the whole bar would go, Norm, like that. When you walk into a room and people notice you or pick you out, or you're on the hill and they see you and they give you a yell from the chair or something, there's something about that just is awesome. So I want to do that for other people because I'd like that too. So, I mean, that's a simple answer, but I think when I'm trying to do my life as Chad, I guess you could say, it's like to show up in each moment in a way that I'm giving out what I would want to receive.
I think I speak for everybody right now when I say, write a book. What advice do you have, changing gears a little bit here, but like what advice do you have for snowboard companies, action sport companies? You work with the biggest, from Red Bull to Burton to Vans to Volcom. You've worked for everybody, down to the most core to the biggest corporate company. What advice do you have for snowboard brands moving forward, given that like you're a father, you have 2 kids that are heavily involved?
Totally.
And you see how much energy they put into this and what they potentially deserve for what they've done or whatever. So as a father, as somebody who loves snowboarding, as someone who works alongside these brands, do you have any advice for these companies moving forward in this crazy landscape that they have to navigate too? Because they do, at the end of the day, need to generate money so they don't go to business. Totally. But any advice from Chad?
I think I think there's 2 things. There's one thing that these are the 2 things that come to mind, and I'll just share because they're more examples that I've seen. I'll just speak to that because I don't necessarily like, I have this great wisdom to tell you about whatever, but I've seen people within our industry doing things in a way that I'm like, that's sick. That's sustainable. That I want other people to know that they're doing, you know? So one would be, I would say, okay, so one of the stuff is like, who's taught me a lot about this over the years, and because we both raised our kids within snowboarding and all that kind of stuff, is Johan Matowski. And he's one of the most, he's just an outspoken dude. But one of the things that I appreciate about him and our relationship and even raising our kids in this industry, and obviously he's heavy in the industry and has a predominant place in the industry, is he's just got no bullshit. So he's got a major bullshit meter because it can pick it out and he'll call it out and all that kind of stuff. And he'll call you on shit and he'll like just give his opinion, and it'll be raw and in your face and the whole deal. But his heart behind it is to engage something. It's not to like, you're wrong, I'm right, and all that kind of stuff. It's like he operates he's almost, to me, he's kind of one of a bunch of gatekeepers in our industry. And he's just one of those guys that keeps people in check at some level. And I dig that because he will never cut you off. If you want to gauge that and argue with him back, then do it, you know, and he'll respect you 1,000 times more. And you'll probably walk away going, fuck yeah, like that's I needed that kind of like, you called me out on some stuff or whatever. So I think that's a healthy piece, I think, that's happening, and I see it in different ways, but he's kind of one of the ones that come to mind for me, and I love him dearly too. So it's like that part. And then the second is like, I watched Jeff Pensanero lead in a way that, like, he's a good friend for sure, but his type of leadership within our industry is we need more of that. We need more of like these, like, looking at the younger generation, you know, really providing highways for them to like run into, you know, or pathways or whatever you want to call them, to walk out, let's say, a snowboard career or something like that. In the industry, I started, so he'd be another one. So Johan, Jeff shows a really good example to me of what it means to cultivate community and connection and bring up another generation and train and like empower and all those things. Sees broader than what he does at Baldface. Sees himself within a role, I would say, as kind of the elder kind of in there, and really owning that, like owning that place of that. And I see more and more guys doing that, you know, in our age brackets, I guess you could say. And then the other part, and I'm just going to brag about them, and other people can disagree with this, but I'm just going to, it's my own experience. But out of my, you know, limited but longer experience within this industry, I have never been more impressed with an athlete program that I've seen in a company like Arc'teryx. And it can be any company. There's definitely one dude that's like really running that ship and had vision for it, and is I think changing and cultivating the way an athlete within our industry is supported in their life, not in their performance, right? So in their life. He has cultivated a program, so to speak, in that company in a way that I think brings longevity to the evolution and the cycles of snowboarding. So providing training for athletes that are going to eventually move out of their like peak seasons of performance, to be able to work within the company or find ways or gain tools to be able to go into design or go into film or go into, you know, and it's actually quite simple, some of the things, but it's quite radical within our culture that is like, you know, either you perform and put out the fucking best of the best all the time. You got a crazy following. You got all these like exterior goalposts that you have to hit. That's impossible to hit if you're not being cared at a base level as just a human. So when you feel like the energy of let's say a company like Arc'teryx or Burton or whatever, I think Zach does a good job with his athletes and stuff like that. But it's like those to me, that those types of efforts to see the whole of an athlete rather than just what they're going to give you on your bottom line is a really healthy direction of, I think, what we should cultivate more and more.
And they don't go unnoticed. There's companies out there that put that extra effort in, and people do notice. And it has a profound ripple effect.
It does.
Because the right people notice, and the right people, sometimes that one person noticing is a lot more important than 10,000 other people noticing that don't actually like care. Like if
totally
Peter Line notices that you're doing something awesome, and Jeff Pensiero notices that you're doing something awesome, and Vole notices that you're doing something awesome, and Tadashi does, and you have this community around the, like, if people are taking notice, and they're the pillars of our community, those are like yourself, noticing that these brands are doing that, that's important.
It's important. Yeah, it is.
And it is really important because these athletes, that, I mean, especially if you're in action sports, you're putting your life on the line to some extent. And to know that you're actually cared for as a human and not just like a number, like it makes you feel like you're really part of something.
Totally.
And then you probably, through that being nurtured as an athlete, you're going to ride better, you're going to promote the company better, and it's a win for the company still.
Absolutely. It's a formula, man, of great success. I mean, dude, it doesn't, like, you can take it all the way down to a family, right? If you have a family unit, and I just treated my sons based on their performance and how well they measured up. Well, fuck, my family would be pretty fucked up, you know? But if you cultivate an environment within your family that celebrates the individuality, the longevity of their life, the care of just not what they're doing, of course, your results of your life is going to be harmonious and connected and all of those things. And it's no different within a brand culture. Like once you create a culture that feels safe and seen and heard and some of those human values, well, yeah, the performance of that individual is going to go through the roof. It's just going to go through the roof. Yeah, sure. There's the rare, like the ones that we idolize that like stick out because they're just like the supermen of everything.
Totally.
But on the most part, on the sustaining part of the fabric of our culture, that those expressions of things within like what Sweeney's been doing, what Robin does for the women's part, like with her events last year and her continuous wanting to create a strong pathway for young women to come up in all mountain riding and all that stuff. Fuck. It's good. I think we're in a 6th spot, you know, like I think it's exciting. I'm excited to see where this goes in the next, you know, years that I'm alive anyways.
Yeah. And just to elaborate on what we were talking about a bit earlier about like what brands could do, just because I'm passionate about this subject, I thought I'd throw my 2 cents in there, is that a question that we often ask ourselves while we're doing this is like, snowboarding a sport or is it an art? And everybody that does it for an extended period of time knows that it's not about the points. It's an art form. It's a self-expression, and it's absolutely... That's the reason why everyone loves these things like skateboarding or snowboarding or whatever, is that no front 3, no kickflip, it can never be redone the same. It's not a number. It's not like 4 + 4 = 8. It's just like that front 3 is unique on that day at that time with that rider. And it's beautiful for that.
Yeah.
Instead of it remaining an art form, they're moving towards such an analytic numbers-based formula where like, this isn't baseball.
Yeah.
You know, and you've seen that in I think you've seen that in just regular sport, and it being a bad call where you start removing, and I know they call them in the NHL like the 4th liners, the people that bring energy behind the scenes that go to the locker room characters.
Totally.
And they bring the fire to the bench.
Yeah.
If you're running everything on numbers, you're missing those people that bring so much more to snowboarding than the analytics. So like my 2 cents is like, keep it an art form. Have some people that maybe aren't the best at social media, but when they show up to the parking lot at your event, they bring something that's beyond numbers on your phone.
Yeah, for sure. I love that.
And like look at Caleb.
I love it.
Like Caleb's name's been brought up a bunch on the podcast for being one of the most like stylish and unique riders coming out of Whistler right now.
Absolutely.
And like, he doesn't have hundreds of thousands of followers, but he has an impact within this community that matters, that's 100%. Important. And for brands to recognize that is important. And that also goes to a team manager needs to be able to set aside time to have conversations with their boss that aren't easy.
Yeah.
And it's easy to say, this person doesn't have this following. Instead of having a meeting about why we should keep this person, I'll just not have that meeting. They didn't meet the quota, they're gone.
Yeah.
It's like they're going to have to go to their boss, and through using their words and being able to articulate to their boss the strength that this individual has outside of this numbers game and analytics on a phone. There's real value in having those individuals. There's obviously a huge value in having your Mark McMorris's and your Marcus Cleveland, of course.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that there's also a big value in those riders, and not to overlook everything based on analytics.
Totally.
Whether it's a snowboard video, like we're not going to get behind that project next year because it only got 5,000 views on Tormentor and Slush. It's like, maybe those 5,000 people are all the next Jadens and Calebs.
Yeah.
And those people matter and have a real impact in their communities.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I think it goes back to that. I think that there should be there's a lot of space. There's a space for the Clevelands and the millions of followers and the online presence that's just like off the charts. And there's room for, you know, the micro influencers, are they called? Or
I don't know. I just don't feel like everything needs, not your entire team doesn't need to be all social media based anymore.
Totally.
I think that if you're not going to be social media based, put your energy in being that person that goes to the events, that goes to the demos, and you can show up in a different way.
Totally.
And if somebody wants to film you for showing up, great.
Yeah.
But not every kid
Yeah,
should have that pressure on them to be a social media warrior.
Totally.
It's exhausting.
Yeah.
And it was exhausting for me. And I see the next and it's like, you have to come up with the new formula that's cool on your phone.
Yeah, dude.
It's
and
like,
it's like poking in the dark, man. It's like, it's an unrealistic expectation.
and it's good for some, like, I look at Truth.
Right.
He excels in that category.
Totally.
And he's having fun with it. And I don't think it's damaging for him. I think it matches with his personality.
Yes,
he
totally.
is using his phone and expressing his art form through that.
Yeah.
But there's lots of kids that look at their phone and look at their snowboarding and like, these don't go together
Yeah,
for me.
totally.
And I don't want them to go together for me. Stop trying to force these things together when it's a fucking magnet and it's not going together.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I totally agree. I'm with you.
Next question here from Cody69. A great Patreon member, probably one of our first longest running Patreon member, and I think he's probably paid the most money to me. So
Thanks, Cody.
thanks, Cody69. He says, "Yo, Chad, how do you make such goated kids?"
Feeling old these days. I don't. Well, first and foremost, there's definitely not a formula. Like our. It's funny because my wife and I often joke. We were really young, and we weren't planning on having kids and all that kind of stuff. So we got ushered into the parent life like early, and so which we're over the moon grateful for, and so we didn't really know what we were like doing, as in the sense of like the formula to raise good kids. I think that there is none. And we paid attention to a lot of, oh gosh, how do I answer that? I mean, they're them. Like honestly, like Jaden and Caleb, I think of them as like little babies and drooling and all that kind of stuff. And there was still an essence I see in them now. They were kind of chill, kind of, open and, sort of almost like these little wise souls, little old souls that you kind of saw grow in body form, but there was something deeper in them. And we just tried to pay attention to create space and safety for them to express their life the way they wanted to express their life through, without, and offering like our own guidance and our own protection and not being their buddies, but being their parents, like we're their buddies for sure. Like there's like, even now we really enjoy this, like really cool. I think it's more of even like this friendship, that has taken on as they've become older and stuff like that. But like we're parents first and foremost. So I'm not there to be cool for my kids. I'm going to tell him when he's being a dick, or when he's like, like, hey, if you want to, go through life and have respect in your life, then you got to fucking dish out respect in your life. And, we were always, I think my wife said it best. I think she's like, our win as parents is if we just don't create two assholes and we just, and keep them alive. Those two things, until they're legal adults kind of thing. And so there's no formula other than loads of love and lots of openness and being a parent.
I love the emphasis on being a parent, because I heard on a podcast a quote that went something like, if you be a parent from when they were born until they leave the house at 18, let's just say, you'll have a lifelong friend.
Oh, that's sick.
And the greatest gift of parenting is when they come back to your house as that friend when they're older.
Hell yeah. I mean, that is like,
be their friend.
Yeah.
But be their parent they're looking for guidance. They don't have all the answers. They're kids.
Totally. And when you take on the responsibility and the fucking privilege of having a child,
it is a privilege.
It's a real privilege. And to have a child and to bring someone into this world and be a part of that, you're like, you never will not be a parent. Like, I'm going to be a parent till I'm out of here, like that role never stops. So as a son of, my father, all the way till I was older and having kids and like getting married and stuff, I still needed a parent. I didn't need like a homie that was like, cool with me. Far from perfect in raising our kids, but that would be a huge one, is that you're a parent first, and that's not controlling your kid or anything like that. And it's definitely, and this is one thing that just kind of came to mind too. It's like your life doesn't get lived through your kid. Like your kid comes into this world, and we had a strong conviction the moment we had both of our boys. They have a unique life to live. They have with a full journey that's so completely different than mine, and I get to kind of hold the guardrails of what that looks like at some. I get the absolute privilege of setting kind of the table for them to like fucking dance life on, and so how I do that is my role, and then they're gonna take it whatever they're gonna take it, and so, but when you see the parental switch of the kind of like living through their kids, right? So see a lot in the success and the success in competitive world and all those kind of things. It's like, I get it. Like I want my kid on the soccer field to score all the fucking goals, right? I don't want that other kid. I want them to be like, come off the thing and like,
19 goals.
You rule, and of course that's being human. We want that. We want our kids to succeed and feel that great feeling of like being on top of a podium and all that kind of stuff. But really ask your question, when it starts to become, and I saw it a lot, especially when Jaden was within the competitive kind of world with the slope and stuff. It's like this, it was like they're good if their kid was doing good, and they weren't doing good when their kid wasn't doing good, and you're just like, maybe there's another question there that you might need to ask, like what's going on in you that you can't just show up in a way that just holding them in their losing and then in their winning. Like, this is not you. This isn't even fucking about you. This is about this kid experiencing a competition, trying to do his best. It's not much more than that. But when your identity and your worth and your story, so to speak, is wrapped in that, then you can't have that separation. And I think that's where we get all these, like, anyways. That's a big one, because I think as we've seen the especially within the competitive, within more money coming into succeeding on the competitive level, the goal there, we have now like a cycle of generations within like older having kids, raising them becoming snowboard, like all that kind of stuff. You start to see those, an unlived life that they want to see live through their kid.
If I was a parent, my thing would be like, that person's not a better snowboarder than you. They've put more hour in.
Yeah, most of the time it's
most
that.
of the time.
Yeah,
there's 2%, 5% of the kids that are going to have that freakish ability.
Sure.
And then the rest of them are going to be like, they just been on the hill more than you.
Yeah, totally.
They just went snowboarding more than you did.
Yeah, totally.
And everybody has their different, unique time in snowboarding
Absolutely.
where you burst through that ceiling.
Yeah, I agree.
And mine happened really late. Like there was one year at 26.
Yeah.
Where like I was struggling in the backcountry, just really getting a gauge on like, airwear, like that whole thing. And then one year it just clicked. And I remember going on the hill and I was just like, I can do what I've unlocked a new level.
Yeah, totally.
But there was like bloomers that you compare yourself to that unlocked that level much earlier.
Totally.
And that's why you don't want to compare your journey to someone else's journey, is because you never know when you're just about to like blast through that ceiling, and whether that's in a creative space like photography or just like falling in love and you give up too early, or if it's in snowboarding and you're like just about to like unlock your beast mode and be the best you've ever been, but you quit a bit early.
Yeah, I like that, Joe. That's I agree.
Maybe I feel like I skipped over this at the beginning.
Okay.
And it's kind of like, I feel like there was a void in the conversation. You bring up that Anastasia had beaten cancer.
Yeah.
What did that whole journey teach you? What did you learn from it? And like, did it change your outlook on life and your perspective after going through that? Because life is real.
Yeah, totally.
And there's definitely an audience here. Mm-hmm. And lots of people,
man.
No one's getting out of here unscathed. And I mean, cancer is a son of a bitch that every single person that's listening to this has lost somebody to cancer.
Totally. It's crazy. Yeah. I think that, can't, what I'll say is that through that time, I want to first and foremost say that my wife led her healing, led and owned her own healing in that. It's not like she had a formula, but she definitely didn't take this route. For her was like fuck cancer, I'm gonna beat it, I'm gonna do this, like that kind of language. She just didn't. She just chose this. She chose to look at, and again, it wasn't always perfect, and it wasn't always like this, and so I don't want to paint a picture that it was just like, oh yeah, she just like, I take it as a gift, and I will use this to better myself, that. But she made a distinct, she saw really two distinct energetics towards dealing with something like this in your life. One was, fuck this, I'm gonna fight, fuck you, and I'm not saying that's wrong, but for her it was like, I'm gonna do everything I can to fight, obviously, for my life and what I have with my family and my kids, and for them and for me. But this is an opportunity for me to learn from something that is inevitable for all of us at some level. I'm not saying cancer, I'm just saying you just start to think of your mortality and what's there. And so she really led our family, I would say, into this, away from fear and into possibility, whatever that possibility might be. And that possibility needed to be entertained of whether this was actually gonna, her treatments were gonna work, or if it would ever come back, or would this end her life. And rather than trying to run away from that, she really leaned into that inevitable thing that we must always face. If you look at so much of, because we're talking about spirituality and stuff, but you look at so much of the spiritual, influences throughout the life, or wisdom teachings throughout history, there's always this common thread in whatever culture and things like that is you should die before you die. You should learn to die before you die. And so there was within lots of traditions, there would be rituals or things that would enact that thing of going, hey, just so you know, your life is temporal. Your life is not it's not forever, And so how you react and relate to death, and how you react to what you not even what you believe about it, but how you face that inevitable and hold that in your life is powerful. It's going to be a huge determiner of how you move through inevitable things that come along that threaten your life. And so we live in a culture that's it's always this energetic of I never want to get old. We fight, cream. It's great.
Yeah,
It's
totally.
So much, it's a huge industry. And I'm saying there's nothing wrong with taking care of yourself and being healthy and all those kind of things. But there is an inevitable thing that you do need to grapple with, that we all must face. And I think, we would rather not face it, at that point, but it was what, our life path, kind of served up. And so she leaned and led that way. And so for me, it was it brought out tons of shit in me, for sure. Of things of as a dad and what does my future look like all of those, in the things that are unknown, that were already there all the time, but now they're in your face. And she taught me so much about levels of letting go, of being good with what actually is, not what you want life to be, right? So we always live in these tensions of I think the majority of our suffering that we induce on ourselves is living the life that we think we want rather than the life that we have, just what's in front of us. And what we had was this. And so our relationship to this disease and this, what was going on inside of her, was important for us to move in an energy that brought healing, Like in her opinion, and that healing was, I'm gonna look at this positive. I'm gonna go to chemo and see it as golden sunshine going into my veins. You know, she would say, like, she showed up in a way, and I know my wife's like a superstar and all that kind of stuff. And I married way above my pay grade, you know, and in many different ways. But that she really led all of us, I think, both boys and for me. And then what I learned through that is that, you know, we were sitting, I remember when we told, yeah, I'll share this story. But when we were, you know, no point in any parent's journey do they want to turn to their younger kids and say, your mom's got cancer, right? And we're a pretty tight family, and obviously we're going to tell them and what's going on. And once we got like all the information, everything, we sat the boys down, we were talking, and up into that, you know, point, it was like we told the kids, and of course both have their own responses, but Jaden had this interesting comment that he said, you know, like holy, he's just taking it in. He's like, okay, you know, and it's traumatic. We're all like in this place that you don't want to be, you know? And he said, you know, like, this is what we in our community, we help people that are going through this. We're not the ones that go through this, you know? It's like, it was like this belief almost. And I would share that with him of like, hey, we've kind of done, I feel like we don't deserve this almost. You know, in a way. And so you have this like part that you're faced of going, you know, I feel like we tick the boxes of our life and like really wanting to be people in our community that support people that are going through tougher times and things that are going there, and lend a hand or some money or whatever it might be to help someone's, you know, suffering or the things that they're going through, just alleviate a little bit. We've always just been that. That's just in our DNA. And so to be on the other end of that was something very unfamiliar for all of us, you know? And so I think that there was at first this, for me anyways, I had a reckoning within that year, and then that led to, a lot of, you know, shifts and changes in my own personal life. But it ignited on the core essence of it. What it ignited was how I'm choosing to show up in my life. Like I have a choice. And how I can view setbacks or whatever is completely how I choose to walk into them, because I saw my wife walk into it in a way that I was like, holy crap, this is so insane. Like that you know, all the raw emotions, it wasn't easy, all that kind of stuff. And it wasn't beautiful all the time, of course, but her tenacity to keep things like I'm walking into what is. And I'm living with that. I'm not living in some fucking fairyland. I'm not fighting. I'm gonna be in this, and I'm gonna show up to what this day looks like, and then the next day looks like, because none of it is guaranteed. So when we walked out of that, I think that our life took on a cadence or a rhythm that was like, we want to live life in a way that is so present to whatever is there, you know? And so not chase things that we need to try to find or whatever, but right here, right now, right in our life is everything that we need. So let's keep paying attention to that and cultivate that with gratitude, with empathy, with whatever, like the sauce to keep it going in a way, but not resistance and not, I don't know.
It all belongs. Is that where that got? Is that where it got?
Yeah. Well, it was actually a saying that I did for my first slideshow that I won the deep winner, was called "It All Belongs," and part of it was like, you know, taking the lives of the 3 guys that I shot, and like this whole thing of like, you know, being a snowboarder but being a dad, and I show this story and all that stuff. And Chris Burkhart had passed like recently during that time, and that was like, there was a saying, something in it, so I did in black and white, and the saying was, "It all belongs." And I thought, oh, that's such a sick phrase. And then 3 months after that event, my wife got diagnosed with cancer, and that for some reason, that saying just kind of stuck in us, and we like would talk about it once in a while. This was before she had cancer. And then when she had cancer, that question almost, "It all belongs." Does this belong? Like, yeah, it does. It has to. Like, being this human experience, these things that are out of our controls, that we do our best, that we all find, well, I eat this and I do that and this won't happen to me. It's like we had ticked all those boxes. Like, we're organic eating and doing all the stuff, stress levels low, live in the mountains. We made all the lifestyle choices to ward off the evils of this that we're fighting against. But it's not. It's in the fabric of our humanity and our cultures and all that kind of stuff. So it doesn't have any favors. You know what I mean? Like the cancer doesn't have any like, oh, you're special because you kept doing this, so I'll stay away from you. And you finally found the formula. Of course we know there's ways to care for ourselves, but it was something that was like we had to deal with what was. I don't know if that made sense.
Let me ask you this. 2 questions here. To someone who's going through a similar situation, maybe they just got dealt a bad set of cards, they're going through whatever. What advice would you give to them? And another thing would be the second question to that would be, what advice would you have to the friends, the family, and the community who may know that individual? How do they show up for that person that, at least for you, seemed to work? Like, there's a way that I feel like it might be too intrusive. There's a way that might actually be like, no, this was really helpful for our family to do X.
I mean, it is a lot to do with like, it's hard. It's a hard one to answer because everyone's context is so different, and everyone's story is so different, and our story was our story, and so we played out our story the only way that we knew how, and that was how I just shared it, and how we respond to these certain things in life was ingrained in us, and how we grew up and how we want to cultivate our life. And so a problem or a setback and stuff isn't a failure or something that's reflected on how bad you are and the choices that you made, that this is your fault somehow or something like that. It's like, no, life is not fair. And that's a hard truth to like grapple with. And so for us, we chose to go, okay, like, how can we take this opportunity? Like, this is not a problem. This is an opportunity for us to maybe cultivate some areas of our life that we're not seeing right now, So that I would say, on a level of advice, I'm not saying that was easy to arrive at, but I think that the first and foremost thing, it seems like, I'm not saying everyone's like this, but when something like that strikes a family or strikes someone's life, or you see someone going through a difficult time or whatever, I think the first and foremost, and it might be depending on what it is, it might be that they're doing it to themselves. There might be an area where they're in addiction or something like that, where they are like medicating or trying to deal with things that you're concerned about, and you don't know how to approach that kind of thing. I think beyond all those things, everyone needs a place to have permission to experience uniquely what that situation is for them, without them feeling like they're doing it wrong, or they've missed out something, or something that they're not getting right. There's so much shame that we put around, especially in areas like this, like sickness, and like when you're not able or something goes down, we kind of don't know what to do with that. Like, we don't know what to do with intense situations because our culture hasn't learned how to hold that type of intensity. We just we want to get it away. We want to numb it out. We want to disconnect. We don't know how to deal with it, And so I think someone going through that stuff is like, first and foremost, most of the time it's not really your fault. Like, even in your situation, even if you induced yourself into that state, there's probably some other things that are happening that are motivating that state. No one's story is ever what you really see on the outside. There's a deeper current most of the time. So I think that allowing, at some level, an area of non-judgment and compassion, and be able to create space that especially if you're the friend reaching out, to understand that there's always going to be a deeper story to what's going on, and people don't at the bottom line of who you are as a human, we don't necessarily consciously want to choose to make ourselves sick and to make ourselves unhealthy, make ourselves like do stuff that's not good for us, you know? So I think that taking away those levels of shame, I guess you could say, and I think that that's a huge one. And so I would say, like, to anybody walking through a thing, that that your starting point necessarily doesn't mean to be that this is all on your shoulders, that this is more of an opportunity than it is a setback. This might be a bit of a correction in life towards something. And in caring for people that are going through things, I think one is like the only time people change is, and I hate to say this, but it's really true on the most part, is when you get to the point where that person actually wants to change. So as much as we, want to reach out and want to be the people and want to be the friends and all those kind of things, which is important for us to check in with our, friends, and to ask the questions, and to also be asked the questions, in our own lives, and remain open that way. But at the end of it, it does inevitably come down to whether someone actually wants to make change and shifts in their own life. We can't ever make that happen, kind of thing. And our best efforts at the end of the day, if someone's walking through a difficult time, are, it's never, I think people give up on maybe supporting people or entering into kind of those stickier areas of life existence and pain and all that kind of stuff because we don't know what to do with it. And most of the time it's actually not anything you're going to say. It's not anything that you can give. It's not anything other than just your presence, and just your presence, really. Like, at the end of the day, when you just show up with somebody in the muck or in the things, and you're not there to change them or correct them, that seems to have way more power and way more weight to it, for them to sort out their shit, because that person wants to sort their shit out. They're in more pain than you can ever imagine when you're let's say something like addiction, right? When someone's in an addictive cycle, they are in so much pain that it's such a great, like, to check out and get wasted and all that. It's such a good fucking coping mechanism. Like, it works. That's why you do it. It's like providing relief in the torment of your life, And so of course that is there, of course that's going to be something that serves you at some level until it doesn't, And then at that place, hopefully through that, there is an area of openness where someone can come and support you through whatever your healing or your recovery or what you need to go through. But at the end of the day, it's only them going to walk it out. And we can be the people not offering the advice, but just creating, I think, the space to hold almost like hold people for them to walk through what they inevitably need to walk through, and not bullshit it. Like, hey, fuck, you just fucked up your life for 10 years, dude. Like, you got some shit we need to wade through. I'm not going to solve it for you, but I'm here. I'm fully here. Like, I'm in. Yeah. I don't know if that answers the question.
It does. No, it does. That was rad. Lots to think about there, especially knowing a lot of people with addiction, and knowing a lot of people who, you get into your 30s, and in your 20s, you almost feel like nothing is going to get in your way, because typically life really starts to happen in your 30s. But for Jaden and Caleb's story, life really hit them a lot younger. Most people are starting to feel like, most people get introduced to their parents getting sick and ill, and you hope they get to the life average of, 80 something years old, but that's not everyone's story.
Yep.
And I like what you said about addiction and everything that and change, because we've all dated or had a partner where you want them to change this one aspect of their life, and then they would be perfect.
Yeah, totally.
And you're like, if they would just do the dishes and take out the trash, they would be my perfect person. If they would just like to cook for me, if they just would suck on my toes or whatever fucking thing. that partner doesn't change unless they want to. And then if your vision is skewed, you think you change them. But we've all dated somebody where you want them to change and they just don't. So if you're with somebody that has a lot of red flags in your, you know, I think everybody has their your non-negotiables.
That's
your non-negotiables. Most likely, if somebody has like a bunch of those, you ain't gonna change a bunch of those.
No.
Just because they're hot and attractive, and the first year is great sex, and you're totally deluded. Yeah. And eventually, the sex will slow down a little bit.
Totally.
And then you'll be like, "Oh my god, this fucking person is a psychopath," and you're gonna try to change them, and it ain't gonna happen.
I mean, my wife has a great saying. We've kind of both say this, but it's like. And it took a bit to learn for sure, but like we're going into our 25th year of being married. I chuckle because I'm like, holy fuck, we made, you know, we're still going, you know, kind of thing. But I think that one of the best, like if there was an advice, you know, to give, it's like, you really got to take, like if you can go into a relationship and a committed relationship and stuff, I'm not saying this is our formula to last 25 years or whatever. I'm just saying what kind of how we've looked at it is that if I take radical responsibility for my life, so me, Chad, not my wife, not taking responsibility for my wife's life, okay? So my life and the shit that I want, who I want to be or how I want to show up in a marriage relationship or as a dad, as a friend or whatever, as my work, my profession, how I take responsibility, the level that I take my own personal responsibility will be the direct reflection of how much I want to change in my spouse. Because if she's doing the same thing, right, then I'm not finger pointing at her with her bullshit. Of course we have like the fights and like you pissed me off today or you did this or why don't you ever do like all those things are just pretty normal stuff of being in a teamwork kind of environment of making a life happen and creating a life. So there's that normal stuff that we just all have. But in the like sort of bigger pieces or those tick boxes, like my wife and I went into our non-negotiables and, you know, we've changed over 25 years so many times and we keep falling back in love with that different version of that person at that point. And I think that wouldn't happen for us anyways if we weren't taking our own responsibility for our own life. Very, very well said. I got advice from my sister and she said to act like your partner is slightly out of your league. And if you constantly think that your partner is like a bit out of your league, you got to try. So maybe you'll cook breakfast. Maybe you'll bring them a coffee in bed. You know, maybe you'll dress up a little nicer than your slobby routine. Maybe you'll take them on a date. Yeah. Because I think that it's important to know concrete that your partner's not out of your league, but to have the illusion that they are, because you don't actually want to think that like you are, you know what I mean? Yeah, totally. That's not helpful. Yeah, no. But in the context to be the best partner, I think that's a good way to trick yourself to be like, I've thought about that a couple times, and my wife always gives me a hard ass time because she's like, you never cook. And I'm like, well, that's because I can't cook. And she's like, well, you can't cook because you don't ever fucking cook. And then I'm like, I actually do cook when you're not home because you're allergic to everything in the entire world. So I can't eat it. Like I eat steaks, I eat cheeseburgers, you know what I mean? And like, you can nail those.
What's next for Chad Chomlack? I got 10 questions after this, but maybe we'll get the what's next for Chad.
What's next? Well, I definitely am exploring this whole, just kind of keep plocking away at some, I have like doing this fine art show and stuff like that. It really spurred a bunch of things because I looked through like archives and pulled stuff and definitely had this part where I really identified like a few different series of images I'd love to, be able to, bring to life a little bit more. So I think definitely on the creative side, there's that piece like that's kind of ignited in me to kind of explore that part of my creativity, I guess. So leaning into that. The cool thing is that definitely overlaps into my life in the mountains and working within our industry and all that kind of stuff because it's kind of inseparable. The way I approach, shooting in the mountains and stuff has that texture to it. And I want to keep growing in that area. So yeah, I keep kind of doing what I'm doing. I'm definitely, loving, we have a, retreat, a dude's retreat or whatever in end of October that will be coming up. And so I'm stoked to fire one of those off again and gather these, great humans together. It would be fun. And I just, keep doing that. We're out in Nelson doing lots of fun with, the bald faced guys and different things like that. And just kind of open to see where it all goes.
Let me ask you this. If you're doing this retreat, how could people that feel like it might be beneficial for them, would they reach out to you on Instagram maybe if they would like to come? Or okay. Awesome.
Yeah, just DM on Instagram. I think that we had put up a couple, whatever, like we're running a retreat, like ads and stuff. We don't really market it because I have this, and I'm still kind of working on it, but I don't like marketing off people's experiences. So it's like, I don't want to create some sort of image of something that is like, it's just not, I don't know. It just feels weird. Like people come and we really respect the kind of like,
word of mouth.
Yeah. And like, even if I'm saying, hey, we're creating a space where I want, we're going to put down the phones. We're going to detach, like kind of like put some distance between this, always promoting, always documenting, always like, record, whatever, then we got to do it too. And so of course, if I wanted to like run it as a huge business and try to like expand all these retreats or whatever, then probably that's the way to do it. But for me, it's like, we don't do a lot of marketing. If anything, it's just like images and the information so people know what they're kind of getting into. But outside of that, we leave it kind of open and keep it kind of word of mouth. And so far, that's been kind of the way we've been doing it. But they can reach out. There's a link in my bio and my Instagram. So
awesome. I will say from me being a man, thank you for what you do for all of us men.
Yeah, man.
Because I think that it's important to have leaders in our community, and not everybody is put on this world to be that, to fulfill that role. Totally. And I think that either were you, but you decided to at one point lean into this, and I don't know anybody who's doing a better job in our community. And I think that everybody across the board, and from Sea to Sky to Nelson, it's like you do a lot for others and it doesn't go unnoticed. So thanks, thank you for what you do.
Yeah, like I think like Soul Atrium is like the retreat that we run. It's totally like it like just it's not like crazy woo woo. It's super accessible kind of thing. I'm not trying to sell on it, but I'm definitely like, I think we've created something really kind of special, and it's accessible, and it's almost like it's like an act of remembrance. It's creating space to remember, wow, I kind of do need to keep like learning how to like calm my nervous system. You know what? I'm going to actually like completely turn off my phone before I go to bed, because I did it for 4 days. And holy shit, like I actually kind of feel like I'm not in a fog when I wake up or whatever, like these subtle things that we don't actually take the time in our day-to-day life because we're in that hustle and bustle that so much of us, out of necessity have to seem like we have to live within. So this just gives that kind of distance or space to be able to maybe remember something that we're not necessarily built, that it's actually really good for us to take rest, to peace out, that when we turn off this phone or leave it for a few days, the world's not going to fall apart, like shit like that. Like, where did that come from? Right. And so I think that those reminders that we have, whether it's through retreat, whether it's whatever, like however you achieve that, it's like, you're just reminding yourself of what it means to be human. And so in doing that, it never comes through pushing or striving or forcing or those types of energies that we're always used to. And so this is like relearning kind of how to rest and show up in a way that you can actually pay attention to a bit of what's unfolding in your life. Because most of the time we're just unconsciously like, like keep it going, whereas if you just create just a bit more space there, oh, wow. Like, okay, you know what? Like, maybe I can look at my rhythm of life a little bit differently, and maybe whatever it might be in your own life, it just creates a bit more, or help to create maybe a bit more clarity around how to more healthier live that way.
We put so much emphasis on this character,
Yeah.
Chad, Jody, that it's
exhausting.
It's exhausting.
Yeah.
And I think that you don't realize it's exhausting until you go out to nature and you lay on some moss with your back up and you stare at the stars and you're like, why do I care about somebody like the way they do a front 5 nose grab? Why does it irritate me and I lose sleep over where snowboarding, like it doesn't matter.
It really.
And so
most of them don't.
Most of it doesn't. It does matter, but it doesn't.
Yeah. And then if you are asking those questions in an unregulated nervous system state kind of thing, it will always be reactive, forceful, striveful, anyways.
For coming on the show, before we ask you these 10 final bullet point questions, because we'll get you moving here, you can grab a pair of Skull Candy headphones over there, some wireless earbuds. Thank you, Skull Candy, for supporting the show. And then behind that, there's a Scandinave bath pass. Yes. So you can get a little relaxed. I'm imagining you've been.
I have been.
Do you like the place?
It's where the angels live. That's what I say. I like it. There's like, living here in Whistler for the amount of time that we have and stuff like that. We had so many like great like contra trades, like things that we would do for photography. Like we'd, do a couple sessions for a restaurant and get like, barn nork. My wife would do the things that we get like sick, barn nork for the next month and a half, or whatever. We didn't figure out gas or groceries, but all the other stuff we were able to figure out, whether it's passes or
free
stuff
candles.
like that. It's the best part about living in a small and mountain community, but where people, do that. Scando was the best contra. Thank you, Jen Girardi. Thank you. Those that were Michelle LaRue, like all the marketing people throughout our time here, because that place is special. So thank you. I will use that. Yeah.
Very special indeed. All right, 10 questions here. Let's start this off. We'll go back to snowboarding, which we prioritized life on this episode.
We did.
Which, what?
Cool.
For me, selfishly, as the person who's hosting this podcast, I needed that conversation more than talking about tricks. So thank you.
No problem.
Best style currently and back in the day.
Best style currently.
Which son?
I know. I was gonna say. I'm a big fan of those two for sure. I'm obviously digging on Cannon's gig right now. It's pretty fun and loose, and it's very similar to like watching. I love watching Jaden ride. I love watching Caleb ride. I'm a big fan of Blake Paul, and I love the way he moves on snow, and it's so poetic and artistic, and I think that presently still to me is like, those guys are great, Cannon and Jane and my sons and stuff. But I really love watching Blake ride.
I love my sons, but I just love me some Blake Paul.
I love my sons, but I love me some Blake Paul. And then in the past, I honestly I'm biased in this way for sure, but even we both turned 50 at the same time, Jamie. Even at 50, like this year we went out, we'd go out and the Bald Face there, and we spent a bunch of days in the mountains together, and I still like following him, which is like, fuck. Just always just pouring out style all the time. Doesn't matter what it is. So thank you, Jamie. Is like,
he surpassed snowboard style. Him as an individual is style.
It is.
He is a walking piece of art to me. Every time I hang out with him, and similar to you, when he's speaking to you, it's not very surface level.
No.
If he's gonna talk to you and engage in a conversation, he's very present.
Absolutely.
And he's actually listening to you, which is, for somebody of his status, it's refreshing.
Yep.
And I think that it is something very unique to the older generation in snowboard culture.
Yep.
For me, I feel like when I see a snowboarder like Jamie, like Brian, Aguchi, like that age level, like that tax bracket of people that are like the second generation.
Yep.
It's like they have this like aura around them.
Yeah, man.
You know what I mean? I don't know. Number 2, career highlight.
Wow. I've been so fortunate, man. Like there's been so many like moments, you know, from first trip to Japan with you guys and like experiencing that beauty of what Japan is and with such great people and experiencing it at that level was such a highlight for me right out of the get-go. I've been so spoiled, like so spoiled. I think for me, I mean, it's funny because I go back to when I won Deep Winter, which was in 2016. There was something about like, it was, yeah, I would say that was a highlight because I got invited as a wild card in the 10th anniversary of this like infamous, you know, photo thing. I've definitely, you know, knew how to take photos and blah, blah, blah. It wasn't like something I was fully in a career with. I had been starting to shoot like more regularly and all that kind of jazz. And so I got this wild card spot in the Deep Winter, and it was the 10-year anniversary. So they brought back all the winners, like the winners of past who have won in the past. And then they had one wild card spot with me who's never done it before. And so I really just had nothing to lose. Like I was just like, I'm not going to win, you know, what I thought, you know, anyways. So I'm just going to do this, what I want to do, like my story. And I shot it in black and white. And I, you know, it was Devin and JF and DCP with 3 people that I just love being in the mountains and moving around with and working with. And we told a cool story that was really dear to all of us. And we had this incredibly awesome shared experience with all of our families and everything. And that was the fucking win. And then when we sat in the Fairmont and, you know, the slideshows were going on, they were all so incredible. And then, you know, I'm worst at judging my own shit. So I was just like, by the time I actually edited it and got it done and all this kind of stuff, I was like, this is going to be embarrassing. Like I suck. And to see the response and obviously winning and all that kind of stuff really like cemented to trust how I'm viewing this whole snowboarding thing. And not to mimic and not to like I'm inspired, like Ollie inspired me like crazy, Adair, like Surface, all those guys. And they were just generous with like information and like, you know, supporting me and equipment I needed to buy that I didn't know what to do and blah, blah, blah.
You got the stamp.
I got the stamp.
You got the stamp.
Yeah, I did.
And then you're in and they want to help you.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
So much, like incredible. And so, I think that would be my career highlight.
Will AI take over photographers? Yes or no? And if so, why is it important to keep photographers around?
Wow, that's a great question. I think at some level AI will, for sure. Like I think that they can create, you know, like it's nuts. They're
like, delete the red chair in the background. Gone.
Gone.
Like,
yeah, I know.
Fuck.
I think that photographers, like, I think the way that, like, if you take photography at a content creation, you know, or the mode that we have, photography or capturing the essence of a moment, and telling a story through a moment will never, ever, I believe that it'll never have the energy, like AI will never be able to duplicate that energy. And so the way that a photographer interprets what they see will always, at some level, trump the generated stuff.
Because it's real.
It's real.
A real
yeah.
moment.
And we, at a cellular level, we connect to that. No matter if we're seeing it through a screen, there's something in us that's questioning more now. Is that real? Is that not real? All those kind of things. There's something inside of us that resonates when you see a moment or you see something that will never be replaced. And I think what's beautiful for me about AI is that, it releases all this kind of other potential and these other ways of doing things and even in areas of creativity and empowering creativity. But I think what it's helped to do, this is my opinion anyways, is that it's helped put the value kind of back in the rawness of image capturing, of just like celebrating like you just see the, you know, people shooting film all the time. Like the stuff that you do is so beautiful and so great. And people are wanting the depth to what photography brings. And so I think it's elevated the appreciation for the art form at some level, not everywhere, but at some levels. And I want to do that. I want to elevate that part of it. But not in like, oh no, I'm going to lose my job. Probably lose my job to at some level, like being a photographer in snowboarding is not a career I would, you should go after this, it's going to be really easy. It's, it's just in this time and age and being able to manipulate and do what you need to do as a brand is going to cut so many, corners of your efficiency. And so of course that stuff's going to happen. But I think that the soul that photography brings or what it communicates can't be replicated. That's my opinion of it.
What a quick note here. Photos from a photographer. If you don't put a rate on it and you don't sell it for a certain price, you kind of affect the whole market. If you're an up and comer and you're willing to do it for nothing,
right,
it screws over everybody.
Yeah, it really does.
Do you have a take on that? And I ask you because you have been in the game for such a long time, and you're shooting people like Devin, DCP that are from that generation. Then you shot my generation, and now there's a new generation, and they're doing it on their phones or their buddies doing it, and they're just willing to do it for product or whatever. Yeah. But by doing that, you kind of screw over everybody has a body of work who's been doing it forever. You push out some of the greatest photographers of all time are just like, oh, okay, well, I can't do it for a box of hoodies. That's the wrong size, and it's in lime green because it never sold.
Totally. Yeah.
I get why. I got this package. It's not a nice package. It's all the shit you didn't sell.
100%.
I'm not dumb.
100%. I know. I mean, it's kind of like I definitely don't. I'm not a really I don't spend a lot of time thinking about that one because I think that everybody's gotta, I get it. I get you want to, you're an up and coming photographer and you want to get your name out there, and brands are going to love you like crazy. If you're just going, you get along with the riders, you're hanging out, hey, my buddy wants to come out, can you play for the plane ticket? That's it. And okay, we'll pay for his plane ticket, but he has to give us all the photos. And that guy doesn't know, holy, dude, you just tanked, a whole job of someone else that could. So I understand that there's a maturity and a place of education that kind of happens in there that it's not necessarily everybody's going to fall into. So I don't really spend a lot of time trying to manage that or argue it, but I would encourage to ask if anybody's up and coming into that and really wants the longevity of being in this industry and really in this community and bettering that community. I think it goes back to a place of your own value and how you value yourself. And so if your value measure is I get to be cool with these cool people that I respect and go out and shoot cool famous snowboarders or whatever it is, and that's enough value for you to feel good about it, and I'll give my photos so you can post it on your Instagram and all that, and every rider in their day will be like, yeah, man, that's sick, thanks for all the shots. It fulfills their boxes and all that. And I get that's a weird, hard kind of tension to be in, but I think just asking maybe a deeper question of why would you even be willing to do that? And then even from a brand point of view, it's funny because there's some brands that operate way differently and some that don't. So this isn't across the board at all, but it's they're not interested in the free shit and people hey, I'm going to go shoot and I just want, I'm going to give you all the photos and maybe you can send me a board or whatever it is. They're no, man, this is work that you're taking away from someone else that maybe they've worked with for a bunch of stuff, and they seem to educate within that realm of things. But that's a fight that's going to be so subjective to each person. And there's, in my early career, there was areas where I had a give and take with certain things, and I was lucky enough to have people like Colin Adair and Surface and those guys around to say, yo, this is kind of where I sit, this is where Buddy sits. I think that's a good place to charge for your day rate where you're at in your career. But yeah, that exchange of to me, it just cheapens the whole thing. So when you're giving your shit away for free and you're just allowing it to saturate because your ego feels so good that it's out there on Instagram and, oh my God, Burton just reposted my photo and whatever. It has a longer tail, and it will come back to bite you when you try to like come into stuff. And so it's actually not, I mean, yeah, it's about the industry, but it's actually more about you. You know, what's going to inevitably happen to you is that, well, you don't charge much, so why are you charging me more now? Now all of a sudden you're a big deal and you've got like a cover or something like that, and so now you charge more, and that direction is not good, in my opinion. Anyways,
I like that you're screwing yourself over.
you're screwing yourself over.
All right, most underrated rider.
Underrated. Well, you know, like there's a few. There's I mean, one guy specifically sticks out to me. And again, like it just, I've said actually that I've answered this question a few times to people, because I've spent a bunch of time with him, because I've shot with him. Austin Sweeten to me is still one of the most underrated snowboarders in snowboarding. He's epic and he's on a bigger stage, but he's still like, the guy is so good, like psycho good. And it's just one of those things that I just think he's underrated for what he is, you know?
In the backcountry, he's up there with like a Rene, you know,
100%.
Marcus Cleveland. Like he brings that skill set
100%.
into the mountains.
100%.
Well said. What keeps you up at night?
Well, right now, what keeps me up at
What's
night?
going to keep you up tonight?
Tonight? I'm hoping it doesn't rain because I'm playing Big Sky tomorrow, and so I'm playing a guy that I like to play against, and so we'll probably play for money. So I'll probably be thinking about what I'm going to do on those shots.
Yeah. I like that. Favorite place you've ever traveled?
Oh, I think the favorite place is funny. It's nothing to do with snowboarding. Kind of, because I would have loved to got in those mountains, but I didn't get a chance. But I think the favorite place that I went is I spent a summer in Afghanistan in 97. It dates me pretty good. In Afghanistan, and spent about off and on for like 3 to 5 years through Central Asia in that area. I'd say that's the most magical, from like Afghanistan, Kyrgyzstan, Pakistan, northern India into Nepal, Tibet, is probably the most magical, just fascinating part of the world. The history there, like going through, I remember going through the Khyber Pass where, like, you know, that Alexander the Great went through, and like all this, like it's crazy. Genghis Khan, you know, you're just like, holy shit, this is ancient stuff. And I would say that out of any place that I've traveled in the world, which I've been fortunate enough to go a bunch of places, that would be it.
Didn't you see like a tank thing? Did you say something about, was that you? Somebody else. Somebody else said they were in like a building and it got like blown up, and then.
Well, we were in it was like the last 2 weeks that I was in Afghanistan. We had a full air raid from like at that point, the Taliban were taking a lot of control over Afghanistan before they actually took total power, before 9/11 and all that kind of stuff. So they were gaining traction in parts of Afghanistan, and I was in Kabul, which is the capital, and they came through with an insurgent frontline fighting. We were in a bomb shelter for 3 days, just fucking bombs going off, anti-air, you know, the whole thing. Oh yeah, full like PTSD after everything I had to go through. Therapy was like, it's like, anyways, that's a whole other story.
I'm fine.
Okay, this was a good decision.
I'm going to my men's retreat.
I
need a sound bath.
I need a sound bath.
Holy shit, that's you lived a life. Lived a life.
Few in there.
Who would you like to see at Natural Selection?
Well, I'd love to see my son Jaden, of course, Caleb and all that. I would like to see right now, I would love to see Bryn Alexander. I think he would do really, really good. And I think that his riding, really just with the format of what Natural Selection being involved in it, just the freestyle interpretive type of expression, I think he would just be such a pleasure to watch and see what he can create. So he'd be the first guy.
Love that pick. or love that 3 picks. Jaden, Caleb,
Yeah.
and Bryn. One area of your life you would like to work on.
Like character or like my golf game, my photography game. I think one area, I think currently one area I'd like to I'm currently like trying to cultivate is actually a better relationship with social media and my phone. Like, I mean, maybe not so much with social media, but just more with like my phone. And I think that's an ongoing thing, but it definitely is something that I want to work on. Like my wife and I went and did a shoot in Fiji like 2 months ago, and some friends of ours own this beautiful resort down there. We went down there, and they only had one central area for Wi-Fi and stuff that you come in, and then we go back to things. And so we had like almost 2 weeks where we had this like, you know, buffer of connectivity, and we both were like, I think I read like 4 books and I slept into like 9, like, you know what I mean? Like all of a sudden I had all this space, and then, you know, we're flying home and we're like, okay, that was pretty evident how much that was like probably a good thing that I'm not waking up and checking my phone and stuff like that. So we've really I'm trying to really work on that part, just not waking up, having my phone in somewhere else, and getting to my phone by like 9 or 10 in the morning rather than like 6 in the morning when I first wake up. You know.
One snowboard photographer that you like their body of work, and then a random photographer. I was gonna say your favorite photographer ever, but that's just too much pressure.
It is. Like I am so inspired by so many of our current photo people. Like there's so many there. I think some
It's like, is there a GOAT in snowboard photography in your eyes?
To me,
Yeah.
there's a few, but I would say the GOAT to me personally is Ollie. And Ollie, not only just as a human and as an individual and all that, but like just even his stuff shot on Hassie last year in his films, like all these things, just like
I shoot on film all the time, man, and it does not look like that. Like I don't know how his settings are. Like I've asked them.
Yeah.
And he's really open.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But
totally.
he always says like, oh, it's just like shooting good light. I'm like, you are such a piece of shit. Like you know exactly what you're doing. It's like, oh, but oops, I got another great photo.
Yeah. Oops. Another cover. Oops. No, I think that he always has sustained a type of timeless kind of style, and I think that, you know, 10 20 years down the road we will reflect on him like we do with Gallup and some of the old dogs and stuff like that shot Dano and all those kind of things. I think he's just continually inspiring me. So he'd be able, but there, you know, Blotto of course, and you know, Blatt, and getting a chance to be with those guys and working, you know, with our time on natural selection. I mean, they're so inspiring in his work. I love what Tyler's been putting out. His edits are tight, and the way that he's presenting things, I think he's really creating a deeper, you know, feel to what he's doing. So I'm inspired by him. Mason, I love his shit. He's so good, and the way he moves with authentic passion through the mountains. It's so evident in his imagery.
I love hanging out with Mason. I love all those photographers.
All of them.
Blotto, everyone that you just mentioned.
Epic.
There. Great crew.
All
right, well, who's the GOAT of snowboarding? Who's Chad's GOAT?
Who's the GOAT of snowboarding? I honestly, for me, it goes back to Craig. I think he's the GOAT, alive or not. You know, he set the tone around style, around what it means to be a sponsored rider, what it means to work with big companies like Burton. Like he just embodied something that I've rarely seen since. You know, I think that we've seen evidence of things, but he set the tone. So for me, he's the GOAT.
Yeah, he created the formula.
He did.
You do contests, you do well at them, then you go to the backcountry, you find yourself, you fall in love, and you have a child.
Yeah.
Like the legend, the GOAT.
The GOAT.
Yeah. And went out doing exactly what he loved doing.
Absolutely.
So love Craig as the pick. And Love you.
Love
Thank
you
you
too,
for
Jay.
coming on
Thanks,
the
man.
show. Massive
Jody.
fan of your work, and even bigger fan of you just as a human.
Thanks, man.
And thanks for everything you do for our community and for men's health. And reach out to Chad if you want to get involved with one of his many programs.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to go to his next art show. Anyways, follow him on Instagram, Chad Chomlack, the legend.
Thanks, brother.
Thanks again.
Appreciate it, dude. Awesome talking with you.
You too.
Thank you.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
Peace.
Peace.
The Airtime Podcast is presented by Van Shoes since 1966.
There's nothing fake about it. Have something to believe in and be yourself. You know what I'm saying?